Hey, J-Bone Nation! Shaming of Jay. He's not a dopey dumb bitch. He gets laid. The court jester, the court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case.
What's up, everybody?
Good afternoon. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I got like, dude, I was like playing the Welcome Back Cotter theme last night. I'm like, I'm gonna start singing that because it's just super dope. It's like it's like your night court theme is so catchy. It's like the Welcome Back Cotter thing, I think we should try to incorporate that, like especially when we're doing trials.
Maybe I can get the guy who Real Black 14 who made my jingle. If you can make us a little Welcome Back Jay and So Not So Silent Bob jingle.
How sweet would that be?
I got to reach out to him. Guys, thanks for being here. If you didn't see the tweets out there, folks, Karen Reed, they got one more net juror. They had to lose one, but they got two new ones. So I believe we need 4 more, but they're not going tomorrow. They're going to resume on Monday. So that kind of works out perfectly because Shannon's away and she's coming back on Tuesday. They'll probably start Tuesday, I would assume, or Wednesday. So me and Bob will keep doing this. Next week we'll do it until they start. And then our babes will give you guys the updates.
The pivot. Yeah, I'm Jay, like Dizzy, if you're in here, I cannot remember definitively whether or not their schedule, they might not do Fridays and read. I don't know if that's just something that's in my head that is not factual. So like if somebody knows out there offhand whether or not they've given the schedule, but
could
something
be
in my brain was just
like a motion day where the judge just is like motions or something, right? Like we've had that happen before.
Yeah, because like Jay, when you're talking about a smaller county and Canton happens to be in a smaller county, there may not be a bunch of judges there. So like there may have to be a carved out day where they handle all the other court's business because Karen Reed is not the only defendant.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll obviously have that figured out before that thing goes.
And if you were not here for the morning stream tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, me, Bob, Publicly Buzzed, we're going to give you guys the background. Going to give you the players that are involved, the theories that have been floated around. We're going to give you, if you're not familiar with the case, or even if you are, maybe just a little refresher. And then we'll wait and see if once they get their jury probably next week. No, Amy, they only got one more net today, and they're going to start again on Monday, continue on Monday,
which we were very happy about.
Yeah, it worked out.
Ray and I were like stressing a little bit about if they were going to start tomorrow. Yeah. Like, yeah. So that's good news. That was good news. And Jay had texted to me, but I was doing I didn't get to have lunch. I had an interview with that Tony Bruschi that I always do like a weekly thing with, and I'm like, I got to cram it in during lunch, so I didn't see your text. So I was happy. You're like, you didn't see my text? I was like, no, man. I'm like, that's great news. Cheers theme, Dr. Von K. That is another classic. Where everybody knows your name.
That is an all-time.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, those are both pretty awesome.
Dana says, I'm so curious about Jay's thoughts. I'll tell you, I've heard some stuff, but honestly, I've kind of like, based on the vitriol and everything, like I've kind of kept away from it. So I'm really going to be evaluating. We're going to go over the background, and like I'm going to get some more information that I'm not even aware of. But I'm going to wait for the evidence to be presented. I'm really not on either side. I just want to evaluate everything because me and Bob have talked about this all the time. But like until that trial starts and until you evaluate the witnesses and the evidence, you could see all the motions, and you could kind of see some evidence, but like it has to be presented. So me and Bob are coming in this neutral. We're waiting to see the evidence. We're not going to once we start seeing the evidence, we're going to start like commenting and making our opinions, but we're not on either side. So if like you want a place to come where like we're kind of just watching it like a potential juror, this is the place.
Safe haven. We'll call it the safe haven. That's what it is.
The bubble. Like, nice.
The bubble. Bubble boy, George, the moops. The moops.
Nope.
You know it says Moors.
Nope. Moops. And speaking of the trial we're following today, if you're coming in late, folks, Melanie Gibb is on the stand, and it has been interesting, and it will continue to be. And she's going to be probably the rest of the day, if not into tomorrow. So if you kind of were like tired of like the law enforcement and the accounting, we now have like an important witness that's trying to bring Chad into this thing, not just Lori.
Yeah, they have upped the game today. They have upped the game. Melanie is, and so if any of you out there did not have the ability to be able to hang with us for the morning sesh, they started with the accountant who had been on the stand yesterday, finished up with him, and then they brought on what I consider to be their first like star witness, which is Melanie Gibb. And if you're not familiar with the facts of the case, Melanie Gibb was one of Lori Vallow's very close friends, and one of the first couple of initiates into the Daybell Vallow weirdness cult. So she's been a pretty impactful witness, and we got to hear the phone call between Lori and Melanie, which if you did not have the ability to be able to watch before, we suggest on Replay Crew, go back, check that out. It's a
scripture fight.
Yeah, it's a script. They've got like the tablets, like Moses tablets, and they're smashing each other in the face with scripture. It's good stuff, and it really draws Chad in, because like he chimes up like at the portion of it where he's like, oh well, Tammy's death, like my kids were right there with me. It's like this was natural. I kept telling her to go to the doctor, and we knew that her heart was giving out, and she refused to do it because she. So it starts to paint the picture that Chad knows a lot more than he's leading on.
And he's saying they're dark. I mean,
yeah.
So it was just picture the Hell in the Cell. I wish Steve does the best WWE voice, but like Hell in the Cell with the 10 Commandments cage match.
Love it. Oh yeah. Steve put up a good little graphic, triple threat for tonight.
The jury is present in California.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Please be seated.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty good.
Okay, we're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. I'll note the prosecution's present. In addition, the defendant and defense counsel. Continuing with direct examination of Ms. Gibb, I'll remind the witness you're still under oath for your testimony. Ms. Blake, I believe you have continuing direct. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All You can proceed.
Miss Gibb, we were talking about that recording and that Chad had made some comments about how Tammy was going to die. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when Tammy actually died?
I'm not sure the date. I believe it was in October 2019.
Do you recall learning of that, of her passing?
Yes.
When you learned of her passing, did you reach out to anyone?
Yes.
Who did you reach out to?
Lori.
Do you recall if it seemed like she already knew when you reached out to her?
Yes.
And did she already know of the passing?
It seems that she did.
Prior to Tammy passing away, had you ever talked to Lori about Tammy?
Yes.
What had Lori shared with you?
That she was supposed to continue her mission on the other side of the veil eventually, and that she would be okay with her and Chad being together.
So, and it was Tammy that was going to continue her mission?
Correct.
And Tammy was going to be okay with Chad and Lori being together?
Correct.
Do you recall if Tammy was ever designated as dark?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when you first heard Tammy being referred to as dark?
It must have been either the end of September or sometime in October. I'm just not really sure.
Would it have been so fairly close in time to her actual death?
Correct.
And again, Chad is the person that would label people dark?
Correct.
Do you recall ever speaking with Lori about whether or not Tammy knew anything about Chad and Lori's relationship?
Yes.
What did Lori tell you in reference to that?
She said that Tammy became suspicious through other people, and she was concerned about that.
And was that fairly close in time to Tammy's death?
I'm not exactly sure when she first told me that. I can't remember when that was.
But at some point, Lori indicated to you it was her understanding Tammy was getting suspicious.
Yes.
Prior to Charles Vallow being killed, did Lori ever indicate if Charles was suspicious of an affair?
It seems that he might have been privy to it at the same time Tammy was. That feels kind of familiar. But up to that point, no. I don't know. I can't recall. I'm not sure on that one.
And I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah.
CH is saying that CBS is reporting
With these
full
teachings
days,
of
Monday,
light and
Wednesday,
dark,
Friday, and
at
half
some
days,
point,
Tuesday, Thursday.
did they evolve?
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you, CH.
And when they evolved, was there another term that was being used for someone that was dark?
Yes.
What was that term?
Zombie.
Bob, you didn't tell Allie Melanie was odd?
No, she didn't ask.
Did some of the other teachings evolve over time?
Yes.
Sorry, babe.
Do you recall ever talking to Lori about whether or not she 100% believed everything?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
Once or twice she mentioned to me that if Chad's a Satan, he sure is a good one. So that gave me an indication there was some doubt there.
Interesting. Hey, Debbie Blair.
And Lori would tell you she received her information from Chad.
Correct.
Just going to pause this real quick. Sluice Investigate says, I'm going to need Bob and Jay to cover the Shannon Gardner trial if it's televised because Jose Baez is her attorney. It absolutely will be televised because it's Florida. Sunshine.
Florida.
Do you know that case, Bob? It is a doozy. It's like the Adelsons all over. So
Totally.
we will definitely, when that comes up, we will.
Hitmen, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, divorce, rich in-laws. Like it's
the whole thing.
Religions involved. It's the whole spiel.
And she would go to Chad with her questions.
Correct.
Did you ever talk to Alex Cox about whether or not he believed what was being taught?
Yes.
What did Alex indicate to you?
I asked Alex if he 100% believed that zombies were really true, and he said he 100% believed it.
Chad's taking some notes.
It's too bad he can't see his pad of paper because his
And I
job
have no further
is
questions at this
blocking
time.
all the light.
All right,
Oh,
thank you, Ms.
wow.
Gibb.
Wow. Ooh,
Wow, that is
it's
wow.
way shorter than I anticipated.
Wow. All right, folks, this is going to be a spicy cross. I'll tell you that. So buckle up, buttercups.
So we could have a bunch of beyond the scope of direct objections. Like a lot of times, if like you know that there's areas that you don't want opposing counsel to get into, like you try to limit your direct to just kind of the areas. But during cross, judges are prone to give some leeway. You know what I'm saying? So like that approach doesn't always work. But yeah, this should be tasty. Old man Pryor.
All right, Mr. Pryor, you can conduct cross-examination when
You
you're ready.
saying you want a piece of me?
I'm sorry, Judge. It would just take me a moment, please.
Megan Sluice, are you guys talking about Pryor? I mean, you may hate his personality, but he's definitely effective, which is what we want. You want effective counsel on both sides. That way shit doesn't get overturned on appeal. You don't want morons on either side. You want people that do the job properly so that it survives appeal and the conviction sticks. It's a very simple concept that sometimes people forget.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gibb.
Maybe we'll
Good afternoon.
get a response from Melanie that goes like
Mean
this.
that you can't answer it?
It's a bullshit question. It's impossible to answer.
Impossible, but
I'd like to go through a little bit of
That
a
would be
timeline with you
amazing.
if we could.
Okay.
You, and in particular, I just want to talk about Chad, Lori, Alex, your husband, David, Zaluma, yourself. So you met Chad approximately when?
The summer of 2017.
And that was at a Preparing the People encampment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and before we go too far, Preparing the People is an organization that talks about when there's going to be a second coming and how you respond to that. Is that correct?
It had multiple levels to.
Okay, so
Talks.
talk to me a little bit about that. What were the levels?
Some people shared conferences about science, and some shared about the Book of Mormon and the evidence of the Native Americans. Some people shared their visions. Some people talked about ancient scripture information. Some person talked about the stars, and so those are a variety of subjects.
All right, and I'm not just talking about the one that you went with Mr. Daybell.
Welcome,
You had
Sinead.
participated in these
Great
Preparing the
name.
People conferences
I always love
previously to that. Is that right?
That was the first time I'd actually been to one when I first met him.
Okay. And then thereafter, how many of these conferences or these mountain retreats would you go to?
I think I've only been to 2 like mountain retreats, but the conferences were generally in a conference center.
Okay. And the frequency of those?
Let's see, once or twice a year. A handful of times I went. I can't recall how many.
Okay. And sometimes 3 times a year.
It could be.
And is that where you initially met your husband as well? Future husband, excuse me?
No, not at theirs.
Had one previous to that?
A different one.
Yeah. And that was previous to the one that you're talking about where you met Chad, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you were at a Preparing the People conference or an encampment. You met your husband there. And then, future husband, just met him. And then subsequent, you met Chad at a similar encampment. Is that right?
No,
Okay. Please clarify that for me.
no, I didn't meet David at a camp. I met him at a conference previous to meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Okay. So you met him at a conference. Was it similar type of conference? A Preparing the People conference similar to that?
It was kind of similar. It was more about the study of Isaiah.
Okay. All right. religious-based conference.
Yes.
Okay. Now you talked about part of the instruction at these conferences were a variety of subjects. A lot of them, well, most of them based in some sort of at least religious theology or religion of some point. Is that fair?
Yes.
And most of them are geared towards the LDS faith?
Yes.
And would you say that these preparedness conferences and these meetings that you attend are consistent with your beliefs in the LDS faith?
Yes, mostly. Not all, not completely all of it, but mostly.
Okay. So when you talk about visions
Mhm.
and you talk about, I'm going back to what I think I kind of understand is that visions are like premonitions. Is that kind of what they're all about?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. So what's the difference between a vision and a premonition?
Well, I would, from my opinion, a vision is something someone sees while they're generally sleeping, but it's a really live experience, as if it's really happening. It's something they feel like they're in that vision, as if they're part of it. It's like we are here. It's something you could actually see. You're
Okay.
part of that. Premonition, at least my understanding, premonition is just kind of a gut feeling about something.
Okay.
Like you feel like something's going to happen, but it's no visionary experience.
Okay. And there's nothing inconsistent with the LDS faith about having visions while you're sleeping about things that you believe are going to happen in the future. Is that right?
Sure, that's right.
Okay. So if, and before we go there, and I'm going to hack this up because we've spoken before, and I think the first time we ever spoke, it was your boyfriend, right?
Right,
And now it's your husband.
correct.
And how long have you folks been married?
About 3.5 years.
And you folks live together where?
We don't live together.
Have you ever lived together?
Weird.
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. How
What?
is there a time? How much of a length of time did you folks actually live together?
so after we got married, we lived together for about, I want to say 9 or 10 months.
Okay. And then now you live in different households.
Yes,
Okay.
What?
And that's just by choice, right?
yes,
So you live in Arizona
correct.
and he lives in Utah?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, what? Is this?
And we don't need to go any further than that. That's far enough, I think. Okay.
I'm guessing they're separate. Does anyone know the
So
answer?
back to this idea of visions. Like you said, it's not inconsistent with your faith that if you have a dream at night, that can be perceived as, it's not a guarantee, but it can be perceived as a vision of something to come in the future, right?
Dreams and visions what I've heard is they're a little different from each other.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, what you heard, you practice this as well as part of your faith, don't you?
I don't have those experiences, but our faith believes that people can have them.
Okay, so is it something that is something that someone who has a special gift is given the opportunity to have visions? Is that what that is?
I think so.
Okay, so your husband has that gift, correct?
Yes.
And your husband has had numbers of visions, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Sustained.
Hmm.
But there are people that are appointed to, or not appointed, but who are have the ability to have these visions, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that Chad Daybell at one point believed he could have these visions.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something in the beginning, and I saw that in the past interviews and other things that you've done, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you said that at a number of these podcasts and conferences, Chad has previously talked about the fact that he believed his wife Tammy was going to die early.
Yeah.
And in fact, he brought that up on the at the conference on the 18th in 2018. He discussed that with the folks at the conference, that he relayed to them that he felt that his wife was going to pass early and had been doing that for some time, right?
I'm not sure exactly when that he shared. I just remember hearing it.
Okay, so it's possible that on October of 2018, at the very time that he met Lori Vallow, the same conference, he had already relayed to the people there that he felt his wife Tammy did not have a long life, that there was a vision he had about that, right?
Before that conference, it was before he met Lori. I knew that information.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. And thank you for clarifying that, because I may have looked at that differently and I viewed that in a different way. So before Chad even approached the conference with Lori, he had been making that revelation at conferences prior to that about his wife Tammy.
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that he'd been making that revelation since 2000 or 2015 or 16, would that be consistent with what you know as well?
Objection, Your Honor. Stating facts, not in evidence.
Sustained.
Do you have a
Yeah, Bob, it's kind of like Narnia. It's kind of like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. She goes into a portal, but instead of going to Narnia, she's at the guy's house and
She's a dude's crib. Hi, honey.
time frame as to when Chad started making that revelation? Any idea?
Well, since I got to know him at least in 2017, I would say between 2017 and 2018.
Okay. And that's when you first learned of it?
Yeah.
Okay. That may not have necessarily been when Chad started, expressing his vision about seeing that sort of thing, right?
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry.
Well, that's not necessarily. You heard about it in 2017 or believe that's when you thought it was starting, but it could have been earlier than that, right?
Could have been.
Okay. Okay. And do the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
Are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell in your church, the LDS faith, are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband?
No, there's others.
Okay. And it's not an unusual thing, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, I do want to go to an area that I think I've heard you discuss before. And you talked about it when the prosecuting attorney was talking to you, Miss Blake.
Wait, are you saying the LDS prayer posture? Is that what Chad is in right now? Is that what you're saying, CH? With his arms like that?
You use the phrase, and I need you to explain this for me. You use the phrase energy work.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I don't understand that very well. So could you explain to me what energy work is?
Yes. My exposure's been that when you have a practitioner that is communicating with you or your body, they have a certain method that they use through like muscle testing, which if you want me to explain that, but anyway, muscle testing, and they ask the body questions about what's going on in your body physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And then they find different ways to help you feel better by just their different methodologies that they would communicate. It's kind of fun. I don't really know how to explain it very well, but
okay. Well, we'll work through that a little bit just so we kind of maybe
how are you doing?
Try to make it a little easier for everybody to understand.
How you doing,
so methodologies meaning prayer.
Well, maybe some people prayed, sure.
Meditation.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's possible for some people. I haven't had that experience.
Okay. Something you've talked about in previous interviews with a number of different people is vibrations.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what the concept of, in terms of energy work, what are vibrations?
To my understanding is vibration would be more like a frequency of your body, just like music has a vibration and energy to it. And so it has a certain megahertz. And so that vibration can have a certain positive or a negative way of expressing itself.
Okay. So it's not something that's a divine revelation to you. It's not something that you feel as part of a spiritual thing. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, some people would describe spiritual things as vibrations, so it just depends on the person.
Well, you've practiced this vibrations, have you not?
Well, I don't know that I practice. I don't know what you mean by practice it.
Right. You utilize it.
I'm not really sure what that would mean for me. Utilize vibrations. I don't know.
Well, when you make reference in a number of interviews about the concept of vibrations, are we talking about music? Or are we talking about something with religion?
I'm just talking about in general, vibration is an energy that people have around anything that, the world has a vibration. People have vibrations. It's just a frequency that's put off.
And is that frequency giving you any sort of religious message or any sort of revelation of any kind?
No, not for me. Maybe for others, but not for me.
So it's your position that it wasn't doing that. So these ideas and these concepts about light and dark, and we talked a great deal about light and dark. Is that something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith?
Inconsistent, yes.
Okay, so the LDS faith doesn't talk about light and dark.
No.
There's no discussion about that.
Well, I mean, I think Christianity talks about Jesus Christ being the light of the world, and that darkness would be associated with Satan. So if you want to say that, yeah.
Okay. So if someone were to be practicing techniques as they relate to light and dark, or make comments about being able to tell if someone's light or dark, that's something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith.
Yes.
And that's not something you would ever do, right?
No.
You would never engage in conduct that would trying to determine whether someone's a light person or a dark person, right?
Well, I didn't have the ability to know how to do that.
Okay. And did you ever teach that? Light or dark?
I don't know if I shared it with anybody. I'm not sure.
Well, I didn't say shared. I said taught.
I don't recall.
Okay. Is it possible you taught light theory to people?
Well, it's possible.
Is it possible you talked about dark theories to people?
It's possible.
Okay. But you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Okay. And I want to kind of lean into that a little bit about not remembering. Do you remember talking to Detective Moffat from the Arizona bound in Maricopa County some time ago when this case first started?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you remember talking to him about the fact that, you don't have the best memory in the world?
She's going to try to.
Yeah, I don't.
And the fact that you forget a lot of things.
What's up, Bob?
Legal Mama had said is he going to try to impeach her with religion? I think he's going to try to impeach her with prior inconsistent statements.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of Pryor, but I think he's doing a good job here of showing that Melanie tells some lies sometimes. I mean, he's definitely showing that she is not being truthful, in my opinion.
A little bit of a fibber.
Forget often.
Quite often, right?
I don't know. That's correct.
Well, what you told Detective Moffat was that ask anybody. I don't remember things very well. Do you recall telling him that?
It's possible I said that to him.
Would it help if I had played the recording for you?
No,
Or
not necessary.
it's not necessary, is it?
No.
Because you did tell Detective Moffat that you have a very difficult time remembering things, right?
Yeah.
And then you told him you have a difficulty getting facts and dates and times right, correct?
Yeah.
And that's not something that everyone has difficulties this, but you were particular with Detective Moffat in reminding him that you didn't always get the facts right or the dates right or the times right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that's not easy to acknowledge. Now in the conference in October when Lori and Chad first met, Chad was there to sell books, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now I understand that you've taken a jab at writing books as well, right?
A little bit.
You wrote, and I don't want to misrepresent. I know you wrote one book.
Right.
And when did you write that book?
Right about the time I finished it up, about the time I met Lori, so 2018, 2019.
And when did you start writing that book?
When?
When?
Probably, I would say sometime in the middle of the year 2018. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And please straighten me out if I get the title of the book wrong. I meant to bring it in and I didn't bring it in because I have a copy of it. It's called The Fire Within.
No.
Okay, tell me I knew I was going to get it wrong. So
Fire
correct me.
within.
Feel the fire.
Feel the fire.
Feel the
I'm
fire.
sorry, that's right.
Mhm.
Fire in
A
my
lot of
loins,
reading lately, so
loins
I
fire.
may get it wrong. Feel the Fire is about your religious experiences and the things that you felt going through the development of your LDS faith, right?
Yes.
And you talked about your personal experiences doing that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I kind of noticed that there was a discussion with one of the officers, and I think it was with one of the officers. You've interviewed a lot of people. You've spoken to a lot of people, right?
A few. Wouldn't say a lot, but a few.
Well, you've spoken to a lot of police officers, right?
I'd say a few.
Okay. Well, you spoke to Officer Duncan, right?
Right.
And you've communicated with the Lieutenant Ball from up
Yes.
here,
Yes.
or Lieutenant Hermosillo.
Yes.
You spoke with the prosecutor, Rob Wood, a little bit, right?
He's
Mhm.
not a cop.
Was that a frequent conversation with Prosecutor Wood, or was there some level of regularity with that discussion with Prosecutor Wood?
It was infrequent in the beginning, but yeah, just for a short period of time.
It was infrequent for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and we'll revisit that in a minute. But you also did an interview on TV with somebody.
Mhm. Yes,
Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember when that was?
No, I'm bad with
2000,
names.
see, 2000, no, I'm not recalling that exactly when that was.
Okay.
It's been so long. I'm sorry.
That's okay, and I know there's always, and if you would just bear with me. But we do know who you spoke to at that point, correct?
Right, correct.
Who was that?
Nate Eaton.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Mr. Eaton. You also spoke with Keith.
Yes.
Who was that?
He is one of the interviewers for Dateline.
Okay. And you gave a lengthy interview with him on a national audience interview. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as part of your preparation for that interview, were there any conditions put in place that you were not going to agree to talk about?
Maybe possibly, but I just can't recall what we talked about before.
Okay. And that was Keith Morrison from Dateline.
I think that was his name.
Okay. And you didn't know him because of any
Morrison.
church affiliation or anything like that, right?
Well, no,
Right. Like
You
she
don't
doesn't
know whether he's a member of your faith or not,
As
right?
if.
I don't know what his faith is.
Okay. And was there any discussion as part of that interview that your intent was to protect your church from exposing anything?
I don't know if that was my intention. I just shared whatever they wanted to ask questions about.
Okay. And at no time were you gearing that interview or any other testimony about having to protect your church?
I don't think that was the goal.
Okay. And that was never any discussion, right?
A little bit. We talked a little bit about it.
About protecting the church?
No, not protecting it.
Okay. So during the process of preparing for this case, you had an occasion at or around the time of the initial preliminary hearing to engage in discussions with Mr. Wood about your testimony. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay, and that was started in about May of 2020. You recall that?
it could have been. I can't recall the date.
Okay. And it ended somewhere around November of 2020, right? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Would it help if I showed you some correspondence between you and Mr. Wood to refresh your recollection, or do you remember having a discussion with him during that time?
I remember talking to him often. I mean, you can ask me what I shared, but I
Okay.
don't The dates, I don't need dates.
Okay, you do remember that there was pretty consistent email communication for a 6-month period between the two of you, right?
Email?
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I said email, didn't I? Text messaging.
There was some text messaging.
Some text messaging?
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to learn, and if we need to refresh your recollection, I can stop things. Judge, it'll take me a little while to get them hooked up, but would it surprise you to learn that between May 20th, May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, the two of you exchanged text messages between you over 340 times?
It's possible. I really don't know.
Okay. Would it help to refresh your recollection if I showed you all 340 of those text messages?
No, I mean, I know we communicated it and
Okay.
you got what you got.
Okay. And you acknowledge that during that time, there was a considerable amount of communication between you and Mr. Wood. Would you agree with that?
I say it was more often in the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Would you dispute that there were 340 texts?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
possible. I really don't know.
And one of my concerns is that about that communication is
Objection, Your Honor. I'd move to strike the narrative that started that question.
Sustained.
at any time during that communication with Mr. Wood, did you suggest to him that you needed to protect either a person or an organization as part of whether or not you were going to testify or what you were going to testify to?
No.
You don't remember that?
No, I didn't. No, what I'm saying is no, I didn't. My intent was not to protect anything other than to share what I knew.
Okay. Okay. So if I were to show you a text message that suggests something contrary to that, would that refresh your recollection?
I don't recall it, so I could care either way.
Judge, could we take just a short moment for me to I'm not going to be able to refresh a judge up on the screen, so I don't know how you want to do this. I can either bring her this laptop and show her the text message, or however you would like me to do that.
I am okay with you giving her your laptop to review the message, since it's to refresh her recollection. And if we can identify what she's looking at, I'll ask the state if there's any objection to that matter, and of course instruct the witness not to start playing around on the laptop.
And Your Honor, if we could approach just briefly.
Okay.
While they approach, I gotta tell you how fucking crazy the internet is. You ready for this, Bob?
The interwebs?
The interwebs. This is how crazy the interwebs are. Shannon tweets out, by the way, if you're not subscribed to my wife's wonderful channel, Shannon, you should. Also Twitter, she's Shannon Shaming. And if you don't know, Shannon does a thing called Trial Style, where she will get an outfit and tweet what it is. So if you want to potentially buy the outfit or just curious of what they're wearing. So she tweets a thing today talking about our stream tonight, Bob, about what Karen Reed was wearing one day. So she tweets the things out, and then I see someone reply to it. Well, I don't see, actually. I see that Shannon is replying to someone, and it has that message. It has that message: you're unable to view this post because this account owner limits who views their post, which means they have me blocked. So this person responds to Shannon and says, Jay was talking about you on Covet, because I have another account. So I went and see. I'm like, what is this? Is this someone who's private? This person responded to Shannon and said, I was watching Jay on YouTube and he said you play Covet. But she has me blocked on Twitter. What? The internet is insane.
And then I put you on blast too.
I did, by the way. She played Covet. She knows it. She's talked about it. She likes the game Covet. It's similar to the game. I don't know if she's in the chat right now. The game, it used to be when you're younger, you'd have dolls and you'd put outfits on them, but it was like a physical thing. Covet is like a
it was like they used to have those color forms,
paper dolls or something.
If you're really old like me, we had color forms where you'd have like the Peanuts characters, and you could put all the different.
Yeah,
outfits on.
exactly. That's, I think it's called paper dolls or something like that.
Dude,
By the
color
way,
forms. Pull your head out of your ass. You don't remember color forms? Look them up.
I
They're
don't remember
amazing.
color.
God, dude, like you had to have color forms. They were.
I may have.
amazing.
I'll look it up.
They had them
Oh,
for superheroes.
paper
and all
dolls.
kinds of stuff.
That's
So
the one that Shannon was playing.
I'm
paper
with
dolls.
Shannon. I loved color forms, and I did that all. That was the OG version of Covet. It sounds like.
And by the way, Ayana, thank you so much for the $20 Venviti. Thank you so much for the $20 cash.
Ooh, $20 Cash App.
And if you guys didn't see, I have a little
And then I'll lead it back.
new thing to the stream. If you
Thanks,
want
Stephen.
Bob's Venmo,
Just
I'll
finish.
switch it between Bob's and mine. But on the top left,
And Ms. Gibb, after
You
you have a
can
chance
scan
to
our
read
QR
that,
codes.
would you hand it back to the bailiff and have him return that to me, please?
by the way, while Shannon was, she's a
I'm
still
sorry,
addicted
what
to
did you
that.
say?
Ms. Gibb, after you have a
Just real quick, I'll just say I was addicted to this like golf game I used to play all the time where you where you like, you just like flick your screen and you play golf. I was like super addicted to that for a while. So I am she is not alone in playing those games.
chance to read that, it's the
chat
third,
remembers
it's
color
the third
forms,
box
Jay.
What?
The chat remembers color forms.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
They're awesome.
down.
Right.
After you've had to read it, hand it back to the bailiff and then we'll talk about it. And if you could identify what was said and the date and time, I would appreciate that.
Are they stickers? I don't
No, they were like vinyl, and they'd come like it would be like you get like they'd come on like a board. So whatever,
Oh yes.
whatever characters you had,
So,
it'd be like
in looking at that, does that refresh your recollection about discussing protecting
Yeah, all right,
someone
now I
in this
remember
case?
That sounds familiar.
Okay, and
Yes,
in
I
this
remember that.
particular instance, isn't it true that when you were communicating with Mr. Wood, you mentioned to him that you and Mr. Morrison want to make sure the church is protected, right?
Well, I think in my feeling, what it meant to me is that when we talked about these things, that we would share that this was not the teachings of the church. So that's what I meant by it.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that what you were trying to do is you were going to testify. It wasn't that you were trying to testify in a court of law or in talking with Mr. Morrison and not disclose too much about some of the secrets of the LDS faith. Is that what you're telling me?
No,
You were trying to protect some of the secrets of the LDS faith from
No,
being exposed?
no, I'm sorry. I guess it's the way you're phrasing it.
Okay. So in other words, what you're saying is that you were just wanted to be careful about what you said when you're talking to a prosecutor in a criminal case. Is that what this means?
I'm not sure how you're explaining it, that you need to be more clear with me.
Okay, I'll be really clear. You and Mr. Morrison sent a text to a prosecuting attorney, correct?
I don't know who sent that. I'm sure I'm not that text, even though I guess I didn't understand. Was I texting that to Rob? I'm not sure.
Well, Judge, I think what I'd like to do is have the bailiff come back up, take the document, have her look at it and see who it was from and who it was to. And then after you do that, we'll take a look again.
I'll permit that. So, Mr. Bailiff, if you'd please retake this paper, not yet admitted as an exhibit, but it is shown to the witness to refresh recollection. The witness may review again the text.
Okay, I just.
And ma'am, when you're done, just put it down because all we're allowed to do is refresh your recollection. Hand it back to the bailiff if you would, and he'll return it to me, ma'am. And I'll just try to walk through this step by step if that's okay with you. You sent Rob Wood a text at that time, correct?
Yes,
And the text was from you to Rob Wood.
correct.
And in the text, you talked about Keith, the guy from Dateline, and I, right? And is that the Keith Morrison? Is that the guy we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay. Want to make sure the church is protected. Do you recall that?
yes,
He has done a good job so far. That's why I feel comfortable talking to him. Is that what you said to the prosecutor?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Is there any reason to dispute what I just read is not what you read just 2 minutes ago?
Yes, that's fine.
So the question I have with that is, if what you're saying is that, well, you wanted to get the story right in terms of the beliefs of the LDS faith, why are you sending that to a prosecuting attorney who's prosecuting Chad Daybell?
Wow. The silence is deafening.
I couldn't hear you,
finished?
Jay.
I
What?
am finished. I'm waiting for an answer.
I felt comfortable talking to Rob to let him to know what I was doing. I just felt comfortable sharing that just to let him know what I was up to. Yeah.
So you were sharing with Rob Wood, the prosecuting attorney, that it's your intent to protect the LDS Church with your testimony, right?
I guess you could say that.
Okay.
That wasn't the whole point of the interview, but
I understand that.
Yeah.
The point of this text was that, right?
I guess so.
Right. And the 340 other texts between May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, were those just to say hi?
No.
Okay. So in other words, what was happening here is that there was at least some sort of a relationship built between you and this prosecutor about how and when and where you were going to testify about things in this case. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
The point of all this communication between you and Mr. Wood, the prosecuting attorney in this case, was to establish how you planned on testifying in this case and what you were going to say.
It wasn't the established reason why I communicated with him.
And it was just a coincidence then that you happened to mention your church and how you were going to protect your church to the prosecutor who was going to be calling you and examining you as a witness in this case. That's just a coincidence, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
Quinky dink.
Judge, I'm going to need to move for admission of Exhibits 6 and 7. These were previously stipulated by the parties, part of the agreement between the prosecuting attorney and myself about what we would stipulate to in terms of exhibits.
All right, there's been offered exhibits 6 and 7, I believe not, well, confirm with the clerks, those are not yet entered into admitted. Defense exhibits 6 and 7, not yet admitted. Is the state aware of what these are, and is there any objection once you've reviewed them, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just double checking defense exhibit list. It's my understanding that this is the Lori for Style at iCloud and also the Lolly Time at iCloud, the Cellbrite of those. If that is what those are, they are stipulated to, and there's no objection.
That's what they are, Judge. And the subparts that go with it, I believe under 6, it's A through F, and then 7 is like A through D, I think, Judge.
All right, counsel, I'm gonna have a quick sidebar with you to make sure we don't duplicate numbers or clearly mark, and I'll have our clerk join in on the sidebar just as we get in on defense exhibits.
Sidebar.
Well, let me play the shots. Where are my shots? All right, so Ali says, I'm not sure how helpful it is. I mean, the jurors will be left not necessarily trusting her, but I don't know if it really goes to her actual testimony. I mean, protecting the church part. I mean, I think one thing probably all of us could agree about Pryor is he's doing way more than Archibald did. I mean, he's putting up a defense, which, as Bob always says, that is what you want. You want there to be a defense, and he's doing it. I don't like him, but I think he's doing a good job here, I have to say.
So Spitfire had asked, she's not being very helpful. At what point could Pryor treat her as a hostile witness? He doesn't have to. This is cross-examination. This is a state's witness. You treat your own witnesses. If you call a witness during your case in chief and they're giving you a static, that's when you ask permission for the court to treat the witness as hostile. So this is a state's witness. She is hostile to him. So she wouldn't need to do that.
And that just means you can lead on direct, right? Is that basically what that means? Like
Basically,
typically you're not allowed to lead on direct, but if you have a hostile witness, you can lead on direct.
Yes, basically.
I mean, it is. I mean, if I'm a juror, I'm gonna be like, that's weird. Why is she texting the prosecutor about and Keith Morrison? Like, what is going on here? This doesn't see. It doesn't take up. I mean, you're still gonna. The other stuff still happened. Chad still was assigning people as being dark. You know.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a death by 1,000 paper cuts type thing, like
Right.
just establishing that she's not credible. Just showing consistent misstatements or flat out lies. So what I'd seen in our chat, and I don't know if Allie was able to answer. I forget who said it. Oh, Shannon L said, I don't really understand what's happening. So what he's been doing pretty much for the entire testimony on cross he's been impeaching her, and improper impeachment means that he's going to restate what she said today on direct, and then he's going to ask her, he's going to confirm that she said that, and then he'll go to the prior inconsistent statement and he'll introduce that in order to impeach her, to show that she's made, like, you have to set up impeachment properly, and Pryor's done a pretty good job with it. So hopefully that explains what's happening with Melanie and Pryor, Shannon L.
And it's, this is what we're going to do. Same thing with Karen Reed. Like, this is different than Karen Reed, for at least for me, like, where I think Chad is guilty, but like, we're evaluating this witness between each prosecution defense. We're going to evaluate how we think she's doing. And like, right now, I think she looks bad. And, there's always that instruction, right, Bob, at the end about witnesses, where it's like, if you think this person was lying about one thing, you're allowed to think they lied about everything. I don't know.
Sure.
That's kind of like that, right?
Yeah, it's like that credibility instruction. Rhea 5690. I just haven't done it. I'm not done doing trivia on the community page anymore. I like doing it. It's challenging because there's character limits on there, and like when I'm asking like kind of complex legal questions for the quizzes, it's very challenging for me to fit them in there. So the short answer is a pain in the butt on there, just because of the character limits in the community page for asking or like having quizzes. But I'm not done with it. People like quizzes, Jay.
They do. They love a good quiz.
All right, counsel, thanks for the sidebar, just clarifying our exhibits here. What is being offered, and I believe stipulated to by the state, would be Defense Exhibit 6A through AA. And on that set of exhibits, does the state stipulate those may be admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. With those clarifications, the state would agree that the Cellbrite, the iClouds themselves are already in, and these are content from those iCloud accounts.
Okay, and that will be admitted, and the court will ensure
That's
that
right, Dr.
only
Bullbutter.
what is admissible through that comes in and is observed or given to the jurors for deliberation. Likewise, there is Defense Exhibit 7, and that consists of two subparts 7A and B. Also, does the state agree to the admission of 7A and B?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Charlotte,
We'll take
Perkins,
the same
thank you so
precaution
much
with
for
those
that.
before.
Wonderful. Oh, yeah. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Charlotte says, do you guys know how lucky we are to have Bob to explain these in ways we understand? Absolutely. And we appreciate you guys being here.
We do.
So thank you,
We love
Charlotte.
you guys. Thank you so
They're
much.
submitted for deliberation. With that, then, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue, you may.
Thank you, Judge. Oh, thank you.
And real quick, I just tell you what Leon would think about if someone was
You getting
given
that ass, Larry?
what you have to do if someone gives you.
You getting that ass, Larry? That's what the fuck you do.
What are you talking about?
You let the man slide today. You got to immediately get in somebody's ass when that happens to you. You pull their asshole open, step into their asshole, close the door behind you. You can, right?
Uh-huh.
Larry was here.
So that's what Pryor's
So
doing.
good.
He's
So
right.
good.
John was here.
JB Smooth. That is, if you guys do not watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, that is one of the phenomenal characters on that show.
One of the best characters ever in any show.
Yes, agreed. Jay was playing me that clip yesterday. We were just rolling.
No,
It's even longer than that.
What I want to do
Longer.
next is go through a little bit of a timeline if we could, okay? You met Lori in mid to late October of 2018.
At the beginning of October.
Oh, was it the beginning of October?
Yes.
And that was, you were, and what I'm unclear about is that you were either a teacher or an instructor at a religious institution, right?
I was just invited to teach a segment of something.
Okay, and do you recall what that segment was that you were teaching?
It was about health and nutrition and preparedness ideas associated with those.
Judge, may we approach?
Yes.
Are they sidebarring right now? I was spacing out. Sidebar. Hey, what's up? Antron's in the house. What's up, brother? JB Smooth's manager. I was his intern. He quid pro quo sexually harassed me. What? Oh, why you got to destroy my JB Smooth love? Fancy fiction. I kind of get the feeling that JB Smooth is exactly like his character.
You got another sidebar? What the hell's going on?
Yeah. Fancy Fiction said JB Smooth's manager. I was his intern and he quid pro quo sexually harassed me. I even got a letter of apology even.
All right, counsel, we're continuing. Just now, apparently there was published to the jurors something that may have had information that was inadvertently published that was not to be given to the jurors. So with what was just published potentially on your monitors or the large screen here, I am going to instruct the jurors to disregard what they saw or anything that was read on there that may have been inadvertently published. It wasn't the intention of counsel to do that or the court to allow it. So whatever you may have read or seen on that, please disregard that and do not consider that in any way in your deliberations or consider it as any evidence in this case.
Is Lori in there today,
We'll try
Bob?
to work through that issue as additional information may be submitted or published and be cautious when publishing anything, counsel. With that in mind, Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you can continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. So October of 2018, at some point, and you're saying, I think I said mid, but you're saying early of 2018, you met Lori Vallow.
Correct.
And from previous testimony, you discussed statements you made that you discussed that you would talk to her almost regularly.
Correct.
Now, today, you talked about the fact that you spoke with her almost regularly up until January of 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like more of like a daily occurrence until, I'm not sure exactly when it started changing, but
okay.
I would say somewhere between January and February.
And then she started what you described as moving around a little bit?
Correct.
Okay. And when she was moving around, let's talk a little bit about that. When she was with you, she was in Arizona?
When she was with me,
When
when I met her?
when you first met her in October, that was somewhere
Right.
in Arizona, right?
Right.
And she was there, you folks were there at the same vicinity up until the first part of January. Is that fair?
I believe so.
Okay. And then did she move somewhere around the 1st of January?
I remember she had the first house. It was either Chandler or Gilbert. I get confused.
Okay.
They're right beside each other. And then she moved to another house, you know, maybe within less than half an hour away from there.
Okay. And during that time, you weren't seeing each other every day then at that point, correct?
When she moved to the second house?
Yes.
I don't know. We saw each other often. I don't know how, at that point, I don't remember.
Okay, you don't remember. Okay, and then at that point, after that second house, then where did she go?
She went to Hawaii.
And that was around February 1st, right?
It was in February. I don't recall when she actually flew out there.
So if I were to represent to you that around February 1st to the end of March, Lori Vallow was living in Hawaii, is that something that you would have any reason to disagree with?
It could be true.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then when she's living in Hawaii from February 1st of 2019 till the end of March, how often did you see each other in person?
Oh, just once.
Okay. Saw each other once. Tylee was out there at one point as well, right?
Prior to me coming, yes.
Okay. And please excuse me, but your relationship with Tylee would be described as not the best. Would that be fair?
I would just say no relationship.
Okay. And that's what you've previously said. There just wasn't any relationship, right?
That's right.
You folks didn't particularly care to be around each other.
That's not true. It just didn't.
Okay. Just no relationship.
Right.
So when you testify that you met her a couple of times, I think is what you said earlier today. Is that right?
A few times I've been around her.
Okay. It wasn't of anything of any substance, correct?
Correct.
So anything she would have said or not said to you, it wasn't anything of any significance, correct?
She wasn't talking to me.
Okay. Okay. That's no relationship. I agree with-
Objection, Your Honor. Strike the narrative.
Sustained.
Well, during that February 1st to the end of March, how often would you talk to Lori on the phone?
I am not sure.
Okay. You don't remember.
I don't remember.
You would have remembered if it was every single day, right?
It's been too long for me to recall that.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
And would you agree with me that your memory would have been better closer to the incident than it would be this much time later, right?
I believe so.
And you would agree with me that if you were to give any kind of a statement close in time to when these events took place, they would have been more accurate than statements that maybe you're making today.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Okay. Well, you acknowledged to me that you have difficulty getting facts straight and information straight.
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the testimony and it's a narrative. Move to
Sustained.
strike.
Sustain and strike that.
Okay. You testified earlier that you sometimes don't remember things correctly.
That's right.
Okay. Is it possible today that you're suffering from that today as part of your testimony?
I think it's a general forgetting because when you go have a relationship with somebody, you don't remember every detail of it. I think it's a normal forgetting.
But you were pretty detailed in your testimony
Jersey,
today,
yeah.
specific about a lot of things.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike. There's no question.
There is a question
Well
coming.
sustained. It wasn't a question, Mr. Pryor. It's just a statement. It's
Isn't it-
argumentative. Go ahead with a question, please.
So what you're telling me is that your testimony today is based on, to the best of your recollection, what you remember happened back several years ago, right?
Yes.
And that today you're not influenced by your difficulty remembering things sometimes today, right? Just for today.
Well, the same.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustain. Ask another question, please, Mr. Pryor.
You're not suffering through your testimony today of the issue we talked about you being somewhat forgetful, right?
It's a hard way to answer that question because of the things that we're talking about today, I've shared so often that those are the things that I remember.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to get to that a little bit about some of the things. Now, after the end of March, then where did Lori go?
I know she at one point was with Alex, and I can't recall exactly when that was, but it was prior to her going to Texas.
Was with Alex somewhere.
Yeah, she went to Alex's house,
Where did Alex live?
in his house.
What town?
It's either Queen Creek or Santan, Arizona.
That's in Arizona. And then at some point she went to Texas. Is that what you were saying?
I just remembered she went to another, let's see. She had another house she went to. I'm just trying to remember where that fit in.
Okay. But in any event, she was moving around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I go back to February through March, February 1st through the end of March, when Lori was in Hawaii and she was at a place called Kauai.
Correct.
One of those islands over there.
Correct.
Okay. And she was with Tylee for at least a portion of that, right?
I believe Tylee, and I think she had a friend with her too. Tylee's friend and her.
Okay.
That's my memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But JJ was with the father, Charles, correct?
I would assume.
Okay. You don't know.
I haven't thought about it.
Okay. So you don't know where JJ was at this point.
I probably knew that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
You knew that then? You just don't recall now, right?
I haven't thought about it. I don't recall.
Okay. Okay. So for a 2-month period, Lori didn't have JJ with her when she was in Hawaii. JJ, at least we think, was with Charles for that 2-month period.
I would say so.
Okay. Okay. And were you aware that there were divorce proceedings filed by Charles at some point?
I was aware of that.
Okay. Were you also aware that subsequent to those divorce proceedings, there was a reconciliation between Charles and Lori?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, they were contemplating getting back together and trying to work on their relationship, right?
I could be. I can't remember exactly the words, but I would say it's possible.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're talking to your friend every day and this great communication is going on, I would think that a discussion about reconciliation would have been discussed during all those daily conversations.
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative, move to strike.
Sustained.
Was there a discussion about reconciliation between you and Lori after the March visit to Hawaii by Lori?
It's possible.
Okay, you don't remember though, right?
It's just been too long. I haven't sat and thought about that for a while.
Okay. And then at some point subsequent to their reconciliation, do you have any idea where Lori moved to? And I would talk about in June, July, August of 2018.
So the house it was either Gilbert or Chandler, Arizona. She moved into another house.
And at that point, were you still maintaining that daily phone discussion with Lori?
I don't know how often we spoke.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you wouldn't be able to say that you spoke to her every day. You don't actually remember how often.
I don't remember.
Okay. And then at some point there was an issue with Charles and Lori and Alex at that Arizona home. You recall that?
Yes.
And that was a situation where you had previously testified that there was an altercation with a bat and Tylee was there. And at some point, Alex went into the bedroom to retrieve his gun because he was feeling threatened.
Correct.
And at that point, it came back and there was a shooting.
Yes, that's what I heard.
And to your recollection, on the premises at that point, Lori Vallow was there at that point?
I'm not sure exactly where she was at that point. She just shared what she shared. I know at some point she took JJ to school,
Right.
but I don't know in between all of that,
Okay.
when she left and when she stayed.
Okay, but initially, Lori was there.
Right,
Initially, Tylee was there.
right,
Initially, JJ was there.
right.
And initially, Alex was there.
Yes,
And initially, Charles was there.
correct.
And then after the shooting, or at least at some point, Lori left and took JJ and Tylee somewhere else. Is that what you recall?
I remember something to that nature. I don't know exactly when they left and stayed. I don't remember all that.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you have information about, and just tell me yes or no, did you have information about Lori's financial situation?
Only what she shared with me.
Did she share with you about the life insurance she got as a result of Joseph Ryan's death?
Oh, yes, she did.
Okay, that was a significant amount of money.
I think it was $2,000 a month for Tylee.
Well, I'm talking
She
about
got that.
life insurance.
Oh, seemed like it was about $20,000 if I remember.
Is it possible you're confusing what Alex took to Idaho and what Lori got?
I have no idea what he took to Idaho or if he even did that. That's not my knowledge.
And you didn't have regular communication with Alex Cox. Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
Okay. And when I say you didn't have regular communication from October of 2018 until January of 2020, how often would you say you've actually spoke with Alex Cox?
Oh, I couldn't recall.
And Judge, I'm looking at 215. I'm inquiring of the court as to whether or not you want to take a short. I've got a bit to go, Judge.
I understand. Let me have a quick sidebar with counsel.
We are sidebarring it out today, folks.
Sidebar.
2 hours later.
Meow,
I don't know, Gary. It's a lot of sidebars today. I don't know what to tell you.
meow.
I know Bob doesn't like you, but you gotta calm down, Gary.
You're not supposed to tell Gary that like when he's here, dude.
He's always here, Bob.
It's all some behind the scenes shit where I talk shit about Gary.
He's always here.
All right, so Jay, Dr. Bullbutter asked, what do you think? You think that Pryor can create some reasonable doubt here? Like
for the entire case?
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with your death by 1,000 paper cut. I just think there's too much. I mean, I don't think so. I don't. What do you think, Bob?
we gotta wait.
Yeah,
like, I think there's going to be more. Like,
All right, thank you, counsel. We are going to go ahead and take a mid-afternoon break here.
And his daughter.
We'll try to keep this break if we could to about 20 minutes, but I understand it takes time for movement of the jurors, et cetera.
Well, I'm not going to be
we'll
out
come back
soon. Pay the mortgage for the next, forever.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
on
exactly.
then, and we're going to try to wrap up with evidence today at 3:15 instead of 3:30.
Oh, shit.
So with that in mind, if we can try to abbreviate the break, we'll do that now.
All right.
Well, how long's the break?
Try to abbreviate to about 20 minutes, but I understand
20
it takes time for movement of the jurors, et cetera.
So, do you think they're doing that because they might be doing that motion later? I wonder.
think so. Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not going to be.
I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of that same issue. Like, number one, I haven't seen anything from either party asking that it be sealed. Right. So I think that there would have to be, trials are supposed to be public, and if they're going to seal something, they have to have like a valid reason why they're hiding it from the public. So I think we might see it, but I don't know.
And by the way, folks, I saw a couple of questions. Yes, this trial is on tomorrow, so we'll be back tomorrow. And if you missed the news on Karen Reed, they have one more juror for a total of 12 now, but they are off tomorrow. So, the motion, people are asking about the motion. So anyway, so as far as Karen Reed, Monday they resume jury selection. I assume probably start trial Tuesday or Wednesday. And now the motion. Shit, do I still have it here? Let me see if I can pull it up. Yes, I do. All right. So let me share this. So there is a here it is. On April 18th, 2004, the court scheduled an order to show cause hearing in this case. The notice is intended to inform parties that the court will require an explanation of an attempted filing from Terry Ratliff on March 29th and whether it complies with Idaho Criminal Rule 47 and Idaho.
And what that means, we have no idea.
Yeah, so this guy just made a motion, not involved with the case, and that's why if there is a hearing, we're definitely going to check it out. It should be, no one knows what, and apparently this guy has had some issues in the past. So
it's a mystery. Like I read his thing, like he was disciplined because he was representing two different clients that were appointed to him, and like he ended up ultimately pleading them both out, and like he didn't do anything that was like really awful. It was a conflict issue, and they felt that he should have been more clear to both the clients that he was representing the other client because they had, so there were some conflict issues in terms of the plea agreements, because one of them was, it's that thing that you popped up. I read through it earlier. It's not like anything like he was like Murdoch shit, like stealing everybody's money, just being like a horrible piece of shit. Lucia, are they meeting tomorrow? Are you talking about Karen Reed? If you are, the court is not hearing that case tomorrow. It sounds like they're coming back Monday, at which time they'll resume picking the jury. And, I don't know. Like, I thought that they'd be done today, and they only got one. So, I mean, Jay and I are kind of assuming they'll finish it, and maybe the case will start Tuesday, but could slip to Wednesday. We'll see.
it's interesting to see the difference in just procedurally, like for when they did jury selection for this case, they took a bunch of people and then they narrowed it down to 50, and then they did their quickly did their exclusions or what's the word I'm looking for about when you no, that not for when you do it for like just your exception.
Peremptory challenges.
Yes, so they got it to 50. The first they did the for cause, got to 50, then they just quickly. But for this one, they're just like each day they're getting a new group of potential or picking jurors.
Yeah, it sounds like what they were doing was, because they had the questionnaires, which I posted on Twitter, and a lot of it was pretty basic. Like the first question on there was kind of fact specific in terms of the question, but a lot of the questions were pretty standard fare. So, like typically what happens when you first get a jury and you have like the entire gallery filled with prospective jurors, the judge will sit on the bench. He'll introduce the parties, and the lawyers, and then he'll start asking, or him or her will start asking questions like, does anybody know any of these lawyers? Does anybody know the defendant in the case? Does anybody know the witnesses in the case? Does anybody know any of the law enforcement? So they'll try to be figuring out if there's potential conflicts. They'll go through all that stuff. They'll say, does anybody have any reasons why you may not be able to serve on the jury? People are like, yeah, I got to work. Yeah. Judges are like, yeah, tough shit. That's not good enough. I got a airfare to, California. And sometimes I've seen, and that's judge by judge, if like somebody has a planned vacation, I've seen some judges say, I'm so sorry, but like, we're going to have you ace your vacation. And I've seen judges say, we'll respect that. You've got your airfare. So that's, so they'll try to get, and those people are all excused before they even get to like cause or challenges, so like people that just kind of like, I mean, technically it's for cause, if they do have conflicts or things of that nature, but, so that thinning of the herd probably is what occurred first, because that's usually just the judge asking before the lawyers get to ask their questions, and I don't know if they're doing it in panels. Like every courthouse, every county does it differently. Like we'll do it where they'll put 6 jurors or prospective jurors in a box, and then we question them specifically. We can go around, we can ask general questions for all of them. They can just nod their head, and we can ask certain, because we do have those sheets but it's not like the John Grisham book, you know, like whatever that one is about, like where they were able to like really Runaway Jury. I think that was what it was called. You know, where we had all kinds of deets ahead of time, because it's like typically what I'm doing as soon as we get the juror questionnaires, like when they hand them to us the morning that we're picking, is I'm going on everybody's socials. I'm trying to figure out, you know, oh, like which way does this person lean politically? You know, what are they posting about? What are the things that they care about? So I'm trying to
That's
get
so interesting.
intel. Yeah, I mean, like there's nothing more important than picking the jury, because at the end of the day, that's what matters most is the jury, you know, those 12 individuals. So the more that you can know about them, you know, the better, in terms of like, all right, is this somebody that's going to be like 100% pro state, you know, that's just their position, or, you know, is this somebody that is like heavy leaning right or heavy leaning left, depending on what type of case it is. You know, like we had a case where it was a weird case, but like our client had said something racist when she was leaving like a dollar store general, because she had gotten into a beef with like the manager who was mopping an aisle. And, you know, she said something like, go back to Mexico, when she was leaving out of the store. And we're like, well, you know, maybe we want some Trumpers on here. You know what I mean? It's like you try to like, you kind of look at your fact pattern and you say, okay, well, based on what we know about like certain, you know, certain parts of society, like maybe this juror would be a good fit, like somebody who has this kind of belief system. So yeah, it's always interesting. It's always
Did you ever so I don't know if you know this, Bob, but in the Adelson case, Rauschbaum hired this guy Josh Dubin, paid him like I think $1 million or $2 million. His sole job, or I guess the Adelson hired, but his sole job was voir dire, was picking the jury. I mean, the jury came back with
Hell!
the jury came back within less than 3 hours. But did you ever like think of doing that, where like you have someone, I guess this guy's considered an expert on
we have never had a client that's had enough money to like, cause that like you said, that cost a fortune. And it's like, that's some voodoo shit. Like, you know, like how's this guy? Because unless he's getting the juror questionnaires way ahead of time and is able to do like some deep dives into people, like what, this guy's like reading the tea leaves, like he's like got a crystal ball. Oh, I see the juror number 412 is excellent. He's got his magic 8 ball. All signs point to yes for juror 12. You know, it's like,
I feel like the only reason that like potentially it'd be good, separate from like him trying to like be as a jury whisperer, is if you're like like you talk about all the time, if you're like, you can then focus during that time, instead of focusing on that, you're like getting all your stuff together. But that's really expensive. That's like $1 million to 2. That's a lot of
dude, I
money
mean,
to
like
have it come.
that's a crazy price to pay for that. Like
Yeah.
that's because his job was basically, I can't remember how quickly they picked a jury, but it wasn't like days and days and days, was it? A
I think it
couple
was like
days?
I think it was like a week, within a week, or
Yeah.
a few days. But also, if you think about it, the interesting thing there is,
I'm in the wrong business, Jay. I'll go be a
you
jury
got to be a
consultant.
consultant. But like the interesting thing there is, like, you would think you're building rapport. If these people you're talking, eventually you're going to pick your jury. You're building rapport during that time. So Rauschbaum doesn't really get. I mean, I guess unless he's next to him, it's Dubin who's talking to him. So they don't even see this guy ever again. So like that, it's an interesting, just kind of like, as far
Dynamic.
as like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we've never had like that's not to say that I wouldn't have loved one. Like we've never had a client that had enough money to do like a kind of a moot court, like a moot trial thing, you know, where we just put on the case, have 12 citizens in there and see, you know, oh yeah, that's something that we can get down with, or you know what I mean? It's like, be nice to be able to do that, but you got to have like dough, you know, because you got to pay people to do that. You got to pay people to play witnesses and all that stuff, you know. So it's like,
We got a BI firm here on Long Island that's one of their commercials is like, we have our own courtroom we have a little courtroom set up, like, so like their whole thing is that they could do that. They could potentially, I mean, if you have a big enough bodily injury case, you're gonna
yeah, for sure. I mean, because you want to know what's going to stick, you know, and it's like, you don't necessarily want to have like an echo chamber with lawyers, you know, like that's not helpful. You want to know what lay people that are more likely to be on the jury because they typically always ace lawyers, as jurors, which is smart. So like, and lawyers just think differently. Like you can't help but kind of think of it in terms of the law, and you don't necessarily want to do that. You want people that are citizens, that are lay people, that to see how they're thinking about things. It's way more instructive than, just like spitballing with a bunch of lawyers. Oh, do you think this is a good, what do you think of this theory? Yeah, it's great, man. It's fucking great theory. It's like, and then you go to trial and you get hammered on it because the people are like, that is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard.
It's funny you said it like that. I was talking about that case. I mean, it's bodily injury. It's not criminal, but like we go into this case, when you're an insurance adjuster, you're looking at like what's the impact to the car? Can the impact cause certain things to happen to the body to cause it? Like it was a shoulder case, and like as adjusters, obviously like we're just pounding into our head, like, and it's some of it's true, but like a small impact is going to cause you to a minimal impact is going to cause you to tear your shoulder because you need a significant. And we in that case, like we didn't have it was a small impact. It was a shoulder surgery, and we're like, no one's gonna buy the shit. And boy, oh boy, they bought it to the tune of $1.2 million. And just super lucky that we had an umbrella policy, folks. Think of it if you have like a house, just as an insurance. Think of an umbrella policy because if you get into an accident, you just never, like we talk about just in criminal cases, you never know what a jury is gonna do. Not that potentially, unless.
And what Jay's talking about there, so say for instance, you get an offender bender and your coverage that you have for liability only goes to say like 500,000. And then your carrier, and like the one thing that happens in civil cases, especially like where insurance is the one who's actually paying to defend the claim, like plaintiff's counsel cannot say, well, we're not trying to get the money from the actual defendant. We're trying to get it from his insurance company. We're not allowed to say that.
No,
Like
cannot.
that,
That's like a throw out to restart the case if you start mentioning
total
insurance.
mistrial. So what Jay's saying is if, like, say for instance, you go in and like your insurance company first denies the claim and then they make a kind of a bullshit offer. And then you're like, all right, well, I got to file suit. They then turn it over to whoever they're, they have teams of attorneys or they use different firms that they'll have that handle their cases. And then once it gets in their hands, like the defense lawyers in those cases, they get paid hourly. So, they have a great incentive to cause this thing to go to trial or to litigate the hell out of it all the way up to the eve of trial, maybe then settling because the insurance company will give them authorization to X amount. And say, for instance, you've got a case where the insurance company like just isn't willing to budge on it. Like in Jay's case, we're like, this is a soft tissue claim. There's like the impact speed was like 5 miles an hour. No jury's ever going to buy this bullshit. And they go in, and because the insurance company, like you could argue, did not negotiate in good faith, and then they get a verdict that exceeds what your policy is, that then falls on the plaintiff. So that's what Jay's talking
Yeah,
about.
and the theory is
an umbrella policy.
right. So with an umbrella, like in New York, the minimum limits are $25,000, $50,000. So the theory is, say a verdict comes back at $50,000, potentially they could come at you personally for the $50,000. Now, what happens is they don't really typically do that because it's a huge pain in the ass. But if you're like a doctor, or if you have a like my point is, if you have a house, or if you're grossly underinsured, like you should know better. Then they'll like I've had it was very rare, but there was a case where it was like a doctor and like he had like $100,000 policy. They're like, all right, well, how much do you make a year? Like then they'll start the process. It takes a while, but they'll start the proceedings if there's more money out there, and you should have been more insured. But like just a little insurance.
Yeah, just cover your ass is what he's saying. Protect yourself.
Bob, I don't think I ever told you this story. I'll give you another insurance story. I had a case where a judge called me to the court, but not only did he, which wasn't that uncommonplace, but he called me, my boss, and the assistant vice president of claims had to go to the Bronx from Suffolk County, which is quite a ride because we wouldn't offer our limit. Like we wouldn't. It was like, dude, judges, they talk about corruption. So he calls us down, and this, by the way, this happens at Geico, and like everyone is like, holy shit, this has never happened before. Where a judge called down our me, our director, our AVP. So I got to take the train with these guys. I'm like, I just started in the job. So they call us. Yeah, I was like, and everyone's like, holy shit, you got to go down there. So we take the train, we go to the Bronx, and this is what the judge says to us. He's like, listen, if you're not going to, and it was, we should have just paid the 25,000. It was a minimum policy. He's like, if you're not going to play ball here on this one, I'm the judge in a bunch of different courts. I know other judges, and I know this is Geico. Like, and he basically, he said it. He's like, you're going to get screwed. Like, if you're late on a motion, if you're late for, like, if you're not ready for a select when we would typically adjourn it, in more or less words, he's like,
totally like bullying you, blackmailing you.
that's exactly what he did. And guess what? We settled it for $25,000.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus, that is not allowable.
No, it's not supposed to be allowable, but this man did not give a fuck.
Wow.
And like his son was running for mayor. I mean, it was a whole fucking thing. But
well, yeah, it's like Brooklyn, probably like which boroughs, it's like I was saying, like Chicago. That's where you can hit home runs on PI.
yeah, Brooklyn is what Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, very liberal as far as giving money, as opposed to like where I am in Suffolk County, Nassau County, more conservative, where they're not going to give it. It's really interesting. I mean, I know it's probably boring, maybe with people listening, but it's the same for criminal cases. Like your venue, if it's
huge.
It's a massive thing.
It's huge, and that's why, like, lawyers, especially in civil law, will be accused of like venue shopping. That they're trying to get cases in venues where they know that juries pay out. Because it's the same thing with Chicago. You got Cook County where you can hit home runs out there, but then like where Naperville is, like DuPage County, super conservative. Like I'll have judges come in, like trying to get like in a final settlement conference, and they'd be like, all right, I'm going to pull out like the last 12 jury verdicts for you. Like while we're sitting back in chambers, and defense counsel's just sitting there with his arm behind his head. His feet up on the chair. He's like, yeah, so the damages, the medical bills or the specials, which is what they call them, were, 17,000. And this is what the jury didn't.
I apologize to do.
I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, all right. I'll take it, I guess.
Do this, but before we bring the jury in, could counsel approach briefly?
Oh my Lanta,
yes.
Are you kidding me? What is going on today?
Who's that woman?
That was the prosecutor, I think.
Wait, why was she asking counsel to approach? That was like a female voice saying, can counsel? I'm confused. That definitely wasn't Judge Burt.
No, it was I think she said, I hate to do this. Can we come up and approach? I think it was the prosecutor, I think.
Oh.
A lot of approachals today, folks. A lot of
approachals. Approachals. All right, I'm gonna go get a snack while the jury is still out.
Speaking of snacks, my dogs, it's 4:37. I fed them at 4. And if you saw Penny was in here, because of course she thinks it's time for her to get her after dinner snack. And here's Prudence, and Prudence is here too. Let me see if I can show you guys. Prudy Giuliani also is in here and believes it is time. And she's going to start barking at me shortly. Prudence, come here. But she won't come. She's nervous. Nelly, come here. I'll tell you a funny story about my dogs this morning. They have when I get them in the morning, they have, Prudence, come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, here's Penny. I didn't even know Penny was in here. What they do is they do their little stretch when I get them out in the morning. Let me see. Can I, how do I put this to full screen? They do a little stretch. They want me to pet them for a little bit. And then they run outside to like catch a SQ. I'm not going to say the word. I could say a squirrel or a bird. They go outside. This morning, these idiots, they run outside as fast as they can because they always try to catch these squirrels and birds. And they run to the back fence, and I see them they always do.
Okay, we're back on the record on KCR 20.
And as they run to the back fence, a squirrel in a tree right next to them just goes out to the side. They completely miss it because they're dumb dogs.
2221-1623. Before the jurors are brought in, we've got a couple of issues we want to put on the record outside the presence of the jurors relating to making a record about exhibits in this case. The first matter the court would bring up is that earlier in the trial, the court noticed that several of the state's marked proposed exhibits had reference as sort of Bates numbers or other markings on some of those exhibits that referenced the term Vallow/Daybell. The court raised a concern sua sponte about a possible appearance of the fact that in Lori Vallo's case, the trial's already concluded and she was convicted. I didn't want reference necessarily expressly on all the exhibits to that trial, as some of the jurors may or may not know about that, depending on what they revealed in voir dire. And so the state has thereafter, I think maybe one came in with a reference to Vallo on a Bates stamp. The state's been redacting those references as it relates to referencing Vallo. From the state, does anyone wish to mention anything further to clarify the record on handling those exhibits and how they've been admitted in the case?
No, that's an accurate representation, Your Honor, and we'll continue to redact those
Okay.
if there's any left.
All right. So that's the issue there. On other exhibits that came in today, they were offered as defense exhibits 6 and 7. The court in a sidebar got together with the evidence clerk as well as staff attorney and counsel to look at those exhibits before they were admitted or published and make sure they were properly marked. It was pointed out that many or most of those exhibits contained improper dialogue, written expressions on them, or labels that would not be admissible, descriptions, for example, that were argumentative. And so while the court is permitting the defense to go forward and those exhibits have been admitted, the court is going to ensure that before they're published, they will have those references removed, and we won't give those to the jurors for deliberation or publish them unless those references are not included in the actual exhibits. I did make a curative instruction, as one exhibit apparently was published briefly to the jurors, and that was the basis of the court's curative instruction for the jurors to disregard that information that may have been descriptive and not evidence in the case. Does the state wish to make any further clarification on, well, I'll start with the defense because those were defense exhibits. Mr. Pryor, anything further on those exhibits and how they were handled today by the court?
Judge, a number of the exhibits have descriptions of what they are in terms of content. And I understand that what I understand is the court just wants the number and the sub number and delete all of the other descriptions, whether the court feels they're inappropriate or not the proper description of that exhibit. I can delete all of those.
Okay. And I do wish those to be not included.
Okay.
Anything further on that issue from the state?
Your Honor, with regard to that issue, I think the state just wants to clarify that the exhibit that was inadvertently shown is actually, to the state's knowledge, not an exhibit. It's not a stipulated to document. We had been talking about specific items that had been pulled from the Cellbrite or the iCloud accounts. The document that was published to the jury was not that. It actually made reference to grand jury proceedings, a preliminary hearing, and Lori Vallo's trial. And then I think it had something marking inconsistent statements, and that was published to the jury. The state does have concerns about that. I recognize the court did give a curative instruction. I think at the outset of this trial, the court gave an instruction to the jurors they were not supposed to consider Ms. Vallo, whether she had a trial or what any outcome was of any proceedings, and they weren't supposed to speculate. So I think that has now been published to them. I recognize the court has given that curative instruction. It also came to the court's attention that maybe there was a comment made sometime around that same time from counsel to the bailiffs about not touching his computer. So I think we just wanted to make a record of that. But we do recognize the court has given that instruction. But for purposes of appellate reasons, we wanted to make sure that we had a clear record.
And Judge, in response, I don't know that there's anything appropriate for me to direct a bailiff not to touch my computer when I'm stepping away from the podium. In regards to the other things, Judge, somehow those statements may have inadvertently been exposed by way of I should have probably removed the HDMI cord, and I think they were reflecting some of my notes, so I can relay that, but there was no intent to publish that to the jury.
Okay, well, on the second to last point there, well, on your final point, Mr. Pryor, and what the state's argued, what was published, okay, I'll clarify, was not an exhibit, was not evidence. the court did give a curative instruction. It was inadvertently published by the defendant in this case. At this point, because it was published, all we can do is have that curative instruction and make sure we have additional instructions in our final instructions to the jurors that they are only to consider admitted evidence, and that they were specifically instructed that evidence is not admitted in the case, and leave it to the jurors to commit to following those instructions. So from what I briefly saw, I'll note it wasn't up there that long. I don't believe it created more of an issue than is necessary that could be cured by the curative instruction given. So I won't draw any further attention to it on behalf of the jurors hearing about it, other than a general new instruction that will come with them for deliberations about what may be considered. On the point of what apparently was said by Mr. Pryor to the bailiffs, I'll just indicate, of course, the bailiffs are in charge of the courtroom at the direction of the court. And I'll instruct all counsel to be respectful of the bailiffs as they do their jobs, and in particular to not make any sort of comments in front of the jurors that may confuse the jurors or concern the jurors as it relates to how the bailiffs are doing their job in here. I have full confidence in the way
What
the
is
bailiffs
going
have
on?
handled this courtroom throughout the trial. And so I'll just leave it up to counsel to follow that instruction as well, and refrain from any types of editorial type comments in front of jurors, please, while this trial goes on. So those are the issues we needed to discuss outside the presence of the jurors. At this time, then we'll continue with the cross-examination. Is the defense going to be ready to proceed and have the jurors returned?
Yes, Judge. And for
Yeah, so that
clarification,
was
we are ending-
Chad's dumbass like published something that was on Pryor's computer that was at council table. Like Chad was like, and like it went up on the screen. And apparently it was something that the jury wasn't supposed to see. So that's what that whole mess is about.
What a dopey idiot.
What a
ending at
moron.
3:15 if I'm going to try to get through this.
We are going to end at 3:15 today because
Okay.
we've got another hearing at 3:30.
Well, there it is.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm eating
Okay,
an
how long will
apple.
that take?
What?
I'm eating an apple. That's why
All
I keep,
right,
like,
we'll
going
go ahead and go
screen.
off the record
It's all
for
right.
now as we reset a device. We'll have the jurors brought in while we're doing that, and then we'll continue on with evidence until 3:15.
Sure. You're still up there. Thank you.
If you guys missed it, there's going to be a hearing today at like 3:30. I don't know. We think it should be streamed, but there is a mystery person that filed this motion, and we're going to see what that's all about. Maybe, as long as they show it. And then again at 9, we are doing a Karen Reed background. And then I'm going to share it now at 7:30. I am going to be on AA Legal Judy's channel. It's an anniversary of the bump. Let me get her channel here from 7:30 to 8:30. So if you want to join, and actually Katie Kool-Aid is going to be there too. And Steve Cohen from Surviving the Survivor. So I'll share that now if you want to join us at 7:30 today, folks. If you want to chat a little Adelsons.
Sounds like good times. Could you guys hear me chewing? I was pretty good about the mic being off, but I forgot to take it off when I took my last bite, the camera. No one needs to see me eating an apple. No one needs to see that, Jay.
Also, I want to shout out, not only are Publicly Buzz going to be joining me and Bob tonight and Steve and Dan tonight at 9. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on there for Feral Friday, special 420 edition, day before 419. He's going to start like he normally does on a Feral Friday. It's going to start on YouTube, then go over to Kick because you can watch anything there. And he's going to announce a special guest. I mean, maybe tonight. I know who it is, but I don't think he's announced it yet. So
Who?
it's going to be. I can't tell you. Steve's going to announce.
Tell me.
If I tell you, I'm telling everyone.
Tell me, Jay. I don't like secrets. You can't do that. You can't tell me there's a special guest and not tell us who it is.
That's a good question, Bob. Here's a question for you. If Shirley wants to know if Chad's kids are on the witness list, can they be in the courtroom?
No, typically they will. There's typically what they call an exclusion or sequester
All right,
order
thank you, Mr. Bailiff.
beforehand.
Please be seated.
And then we always ask for it in cases, you know, and it's difficult in cases like, especially for the prosecution, if they've got family members in the courtroom, and obviously the family wants to be in there for the trial, but they know that they're going to be calling them. Typically what they'll do is the state will try to call them early, very early in the case. Or was it a giant radish? It's hilarious. So no, I don't think that the kids will be in here at this point, just because, and Judge Boyce is very serious about the exclusionary rule. You've heard him admonish jurors and witnesses and everybody about it. So they don't want them, you know, watching the testimony, because obviously they could go back. They could watch Jay and I stream, and if they wanted to see, you know, I mean, it's obviously out there. So no, typically they will keep them excluded, and then after they testify, they can sit in and watch the remainder of the trial. They're probably not even there. Like, if they knew that they're excluded, they're not going to just be sitting out in the hallway because they know they can't come in anyway. But that's not 100%, because it could be different here. But most of the time, that's the rule.
All right, Ms. Gibbs is still under oath. Mr. Pryor is conducting cross-examination. As I mentioned, we'll go for another 25 minutes here till 3:15 and conclude, since the court's going to have another hearing outside the presence of the jurors later today.
Judge, the technical issues are resolved at this point.
Yes, you can proceed.
Shiraz, it was a Cosmic Crisp, which is delicious. That's like it's like a really good apple. I'd never heard of it before. It's like the Honey Crisp, except like another level of delicious.
Ooh, I love a good Honey Crisp.
Oh man, like this, I'm telling you, this Cosmic Crisp.
Now, Ms. Gibb, I need just a clarification, if I could. You talked about how light and dark are they something that's not within your practice? Is that what I understand?
And not the way that they described light and darkness in my beliefs as a member of the church. I would just talk about light being the light of Christ.
Okay. So in other words, identifying someone as light or dark would not be something that you would do?
No.
Okay. And discussing the issue of portals, there was some discussion with the prosecuting attorney about portals. And please bear with me. A portal is what exactly?
It was made known
It's when we end our YouTube stream and then it goes to another channel.
to me by Lori that portals are something they created by saying some type of prayer, I think, and creating a place where they could communicate spiritually to each other.
Okay. And that's not something that you would practice as well?
No.
Sir, have you ever seen Star Trek?
I noticed that a lot of your testimony, when you were talking about zombies and talking about information about various levels of light and dark, and frankly, most of the subject was information that was conveyed to you by Lori. Would that be fair?
Yes.
You didn't talk to Chad very often, did you?
No.
And in all the time that you knew him, I would say, less than a handful of times you actually spoke with him, right?
I'd say so.
Would that be fair?
It'd be fair.
Okay. So when I was listening to your testimony earlier with Ms. Blake, a comment that you continually made was that Chad told Lori and Lori told me, and I may be paraphrasing that the wrong way, but in essence, that's what you were saying, right?
Correct.
So I guess what I'm asking is you're relying on what Lori Vallow is telling you, and you don't really know whether what she's telling you is the truth or not, do you?
I would say I wouldn't know 100% sure, no.
Okay. Because Lori has lied to you before.
Yes.
And she's been untruthful to you about other things, correct?
Yes.
I mean, you talked a little bit about the whereabouts of JJ, and in your view, she lied to you about that, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, when I listened to the tape recording, remember the tape that Miss Blake played at the end of the conversation that you tape recorded? Now, prior to that tape recording, had you talked to any law enforcement agency about recording that conversation?
Never.
And I noticed it was interesting because before you started the tape recording, you identified who you were and time and all of that, and made a very clear, succinct record of what was going on. And it sounds like you just deliberately knew in advance you were going to tape. Is that correct?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So you knew what the subject was going to be, and you knew what to answer and what not to answer while you were on that tape, right?
I had no idea what the conversation, how it was going to flow. So I can't say that that's true.
Well, you knew the subject of what the conversation was because you initiated that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my first cosmic apple ever, and it is indeed cosmic. It's otherworldly.
When I listened to the tape,
the best apple I've ever had.
Wow.
And if we have to
Dude,
listen to it
delicious.
again, we can. But when I listened to the tape, it sounded like Lori's responses were in the singular. And what I mean by that, as an example, I had to move her to somewhere else, talking about Tylee. It wasn't they had to move her, it was I had to move her. Do you recall that?
I believe so.
And then the other one again in the singular. I will do whatever the Lord needs me to do.
Yes.
Okay. So again in the singular, when you and Lori and I guess Chad was in the background, he talked a little bit about his experiences with Tammy. But Lori Vallow's comments were not we will or they will, it was I will in the singular. Do you recall that?
That sounds familiar.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you need to listen to it again to make sure, or are you pretty
No.
clear?
Oh, it's
Okay. And then when you talk to Lori about Alex, about saying the things that Alex did about, you don't want to know. Okay. She said again in the singular, I don't know why he would say that. Not we don't know why he would say that. It's I don't know why he would say that. Right?
Right.
Okay. Now, initially when the investigation started over the disappearance of JJ, and that was close to Thanksgiving time, correct?
Between October and November, yeah.
Well, the end of November when the
Yeah.
police showed up, right?
Yeah,
You remember that, right?
I do.
Okay, so you do have a recollection of about that when this took place, right? Okay. Basically, you received a call from the police, correct?
Correct.
And initially, it wasn't that you kind of lied, you lied to the police officers. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
So when you said you kind of maybe weren't truthful in the beginning, no, you lied to the police,
Sure.
correct?
Sure.
Okay. And then after you told the police a lie about having JJ with you, correct? You then, after some more prompting from the police, you sort of cleared that up, right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the prior testimony.
Sustained.
Okay, so how did that play out then after you initially lied to the police? How did it play out that you then corrected yourself with law enforcement after your initial lie?
I went to see them personally and talked to them about everything I knew.
Okay, and that's when you realized that, oh, well, my lie to them isn't going to hold up. I better sort of tell them something else, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative and mischaracterizes the prior testimony.
Sustained.
So the purpose of going back to the police was to clear up your initial lie, correct?
No,
Oh, it wasn't?
no.
Well, the purpose of going back to the police was to tell them what you felt they needed to hear, right?
I felt an obligation to share everything I knew with them.
Okay. And I guess that obligation wasn't so strong when you initially told the police the lie that you had JJ, right?
It was a conflict within me.
Okay, and that conflict within you said, it's more important that I lie for Lori Vallow than it is I tell the police the truth, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and misstates the prior testimony.
That is overruled. You can
So-
answer. Hold on, there wasn't an answer.
Sorry, Judge.
Sorry.
You need me to have her recite the question again? Ms. Clerk, could you state the question for me, please?
I don't know how to answer that other than say it was a difficult moment for me, and that's just what I did.
Okay, so is being here today a difficult moment for you?
Of course it is.
Okay, and you're having some struggles because you're having some struggles because at some point you know you have information about JJ Vallow and about what happened to JJ Vallow, correct?
Best of my knowledge.
That's what?
Best of my knowledge, I'm sharing all that I know about.
Okay. So I want to go to the timeline of Chad Daybell a little bit.
Okay.
And you talked about arriving in Rexburg for the weekend of the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, that time frame. I guess Monday was the 23rd, Sunday was the 22nd, 21st on Saturday, 20th on Friday, 19th. And my recollection when I reviewed all of the reports and the other testimony that you've given, I was under the impression you arrived on Thursday.
I thought it was Wednesday, but it could have been Thursday. It's been too long to remember.
Okay, so the comment that you said that you saw Chad Daybell 2, 3, or 4 times previously in testimony, you're not sure about that either, correct?
Well, I can recall certain moments. I'd have to sit down and recall every time I saw him and
Okay.
think about that a little bit more.
Okay, so we aren't clear about how many times we saw Chad on that weekend, right?
Not 100% clear.
Okay. And let's kind of go over the timeline for that weekend if we could. If you can try to remember it if possible. You arrived not on Wednesday like you just previously testified to. You arrived on Thursday, right?
Is that right? I don't remember.
Okay.
You'd have to look at documents to show that. I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me if it was Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. And again, you said you flew in?
That's right.
And what time did you fly in?
I feel like it was in the afternoon, but I can't recall the time.
And please don't let me mischaracterize your testimony, but my recollection is on that first day that you flew in on the Thursday, you didn't see Chad Daybell.
I believe it was either that evening or the next evening. I'm not recalling that.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm questioning you about this is the next evening, I almost said it, your boyfriend at the time came into town, correct?
Yeah, Friday.
And that was later in the afternoon, late in the evening, right?
That's right.
So when your boyfriend came into town, you hadn't seen Chad yet before your boyfriend
Well,
arrived, correct?
that's not true.
No, you did?
Yeah, I saw Chad
When did you see him?
previous to that.
What time?
Well, it was in the evening. I remember when we walked around the track at BYU, Idaho. It was in the evening. It was getting darker outside.
Okay. And that's the interaction that you described between Lori and Chad.
Part of it, yeah.
Now, one of the things when I listened to Lori's tape, what I was curious about, and I guess I didn't understand, was that on the tape recording with you and Chad and Lori, you talked to her about the issue of adultery, that she was having a relationship with a married man, and she was a married woman.
Correct.
Okay, and that is what was the phrase you used to describe what that is?
Inappropriate, maybe? I don't remember.
But it had a religious connotation to it, that it was in violation of something.
We were referencing one of at the people in the Book of Mormon and talking about a certain king that had that type of behavior.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she said something about divorce.
Right.
And I'm going off of my recollection, but while you and David were going through your relationship in the beginning, he was still married, wasn't he? Or had he completed his divorce at that point?
He was in the process of completing it.
So he was still technically married at that point, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Sustained.
Okay. Okay. So then David arrived on Friday.
Yes.
Did you see Chad at all on Friday?
I can't remember if I saw him Friday.
Okay. And then you were there for, I don't remember the name of the conference. Firm? Was that the name of the conference?
Trying to remember if that was Firm Foundation, maybe. Okay.
Was that, well, I'm at,
I think that's the one.
I think
it
we're
was.
both struggling to find out which one that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Which of those.
That I think that's what they referenced. It's my memory.
Okay. Firm Foundation. What is Firm Foundation?
It's a few people that got together and talked about evidences of the Book of Mormon and some science. We're talking a lot about science
Okay.
as well that weekend.
Okay.
Oh, I
And,
thought
and that
was like
started
a
early in the
squatting.
morning on
Like everybody
that,
did a lot of
that
squats. and
Saturday
core
morning,
work.
right?
Sometime Saturday morning. I'm not recalling exactly the timing, but I would say sometime in the morning.
And then it ran till relatively late that night.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I recall it was 10 plus hours of the seminar. It was an all day event, right?
I think so, yeah.
And that was basically all day Saturday, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we go to Sunday, right?
Right.
And my recollection is, I'm going off of memory, is everybody went to church that morning?
I don't remember anybody going to church.
You don't remember Chad going to church?
No.
Do you remember a discussion with Chad and David about going to see a piece of property after Chad gets out of church on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember him saying it could be. I just don't recall it, but it could be. But yes, they were going to go look at some property.
And after church, after they got done with their services and everybody was going to church, and I can't remember if you and David went to church that morning, but there was a reference to Chad and you guys were waiting for him to finish up church before you went to visit a piece of property, right?
Yeah, I feel like he might have been the only one if he did go. Yeah, I don't recall anybody else going. I just don't recall it.
Okay. So Chad, obviously you didn't see him Sunday morning until you guys went out to see the property that Sunday afternoon.
I don't recall seeing him till then.
But you do recall going out to a piece of property, and I want to say south and east of Chad's property.
I wouldn't know the directions.
Me neither. But you went out there and do you recall who was out there when you went to look at that piece of property?
So it was Chad and I believe a man that was a realtor and me and David. I think Alex might have been there. And then there was a couple that drove by and, spoke to all of us for a few minutes and then they left.
And I don't recall, was Lori there as well?
No, she wasn't.
Okay. She was at home with who?
I'm assuming she was at home with her son.
JJ. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because after you folks went out to look at this piece of property, you went directly back to Lori's townhome, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. And we don't know where Chad when he went home, I presume, right? You don't know.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, pause it real quick.
So was this?
So I've seen a couple questions in here. What he's trying to establish, this is the night that everyone kind of assumes that JJ was killed. So what he's trying to establish here is that Chad was not there. So that's what he's getting at right around now. This is the area that he's like poking around in. So that's where we're at in this cross right now.
It's a piece of property that your I almost said it again, your boyfriend and please forgive me if I meant to say husband or boyfriend, it's going to be tough for me, but your boyfriend at the time was
See, that's where he fucking pisses me off. Just fucking say, please forgive me if it's tough for me. Like, fuck you. Just say boyfriend. You can't handle that prior.
looking at a piece of property to purchase, correct?
They were introducing the idea of purchasing it, but he had no concept if he would do it or not, but it was something they proposed to him.
Okay. Okay. Well, I understood it a different way. I understood that your boyfriend was interested in potentially developing a piece of property and asked Chad to introduce him to a realtor. That's the way I understood it.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike. Counsel's testifying.
Judge,
The
I'm
question was asked and answered.
Sustained.
Is it possible that it was your boyfriend who was looking at a piece of property and asked Chad to refer him to a real estate agent?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But in any event, you and Alex and your boyfriend David and this real estate person and Chad went out to look at this piece of property, correct?
Correct.
And then you went back home, and that was late afternoon, if I recall. Is that correct?
It feels like it was.
Yeah. And then at that point, the one of the projects that you and Lori, I think it was just you and Lori, were involved was starting to prepare to do what's called a podcast.
Are you talking about the evening, the one on Sunday evening?
That Sunday, we're on Sunday right now, I think.
Yeah. So yeah. We were going to sometime do it. We weren't sure exactly we were going to get to it, but we finally got to it on Sunday night.
Right. And correct me, was it just you and Lori, or was David involved in that too?
All three of us,
The
yes.
three of you. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you were going to do this podcast, and you did that. And my recollection is it started at like 8 or 9 o'clock,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
and it went till after midnight.
Yeah, somewhere. I knew it was like around midnight. I don't know if it was after it. I just know it was kind of late.
Okay. So you didn't see Chad other than on Sunday. You saw Chad for the land. And you didn't see him that night during the podcast, right?
He might have come over after the land. I don't recall, but he was not at the podcast.
Okay. And you don't recall whether he was there after the land, though. You're saying he may have.
It's possible.
Okay. Okay. But then during the podcast, my understanding is that sometime during the podcast, you observed Alex Cox carrying JJ Vallow on Sunday night with his head on his shoulders upstairs.
That's right.
Okay. And you don't know which bedroom he put JJ in, is that right?
I did not witness where he put him, but he was not in JJ's room or he was not in Tylee's room.
Okay. But you and David were in Tylee's room that night.
No, we were in both. Well, no, it was JJ's room.
Oh, you were in JJ's room?
Yeah, it was JJ's room.
Okay. Now, in terms of the bedrooms, when you walk up the stairs, there's 3 bedrooms up there, correct?
Yes.
And they're all relatively close bedrooms. Would you agree with that?
Tylee and JJ's were close and Lori's was down the hallway.
Okay. But when we say down the hallway, that's a relative term, isn't it?
Well, they're not as close as the other two.
Right. But they're also not a long distance away. This was not a large townhome, was it?
No, it was just from one end of the townhome to the other.
Right. It's a short distance to one
I
bedroom.
guess relative to a lot of things, yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you went to bed at whatever time that was after the podcast, at that point, you were presuming that Lori also went to bed and decided to lay down with JJ, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you and David you went to sleep after some prayer.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't know where JJ was that night, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. But you were in the house when Alex brought him up initially at what time was that when Alex brought him up again?
I don't recall. It was a little bit, maybe a few hours into us doing the podcast.
Okay. And then you said David had I don't want to put words, and he had a nightmare or a vision?
They kind of felt like both. I'm not really sure. It was just a bad experience he had.
Okay,
You'd have
and
to ask him what he felt like it was.
you don't remember?
I remember he was very alarmed by it and upset by it.
Okay. And was he alarmed enough and upset enough that did both of you get up and knock on the door of Lori's door?
No,
Did either of you try to locate Lori and say, is everything okay? Because this was alarming.
I did.
Did you knock on the door of the
Yeah, I went over to her door and tried to open it and it was locked.
okay, but you didn't knock, right?
I might have. I don't recall. I just know I tried to get in.
Okay, and it wasn't opened.
Right.
Did you go down to the other bedroom that was closer to where you and David were staying and check on that bedroom?
No.
Okay. Okay. And then after this alarming event that was so traumatic to David, you slept in until what time?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I probably woke up around 7 or something in the morning. I don't know.
Okay. And from previous testimony, you indicated that you took off and left at about 9:30. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Okay. And at that point, again, even though David had this traumatic experience about this nightmare, you didn't ask to see JJ, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Overruled.
You didn't ask to see JJ.
It's possible I did. I don't recall what I said to her when I came downstairs.
Okay. Well, you make a lot of comments, it's possible, but you don't remember asking to see JJ, do you?
I remember when you're meeting with somebody for a full weekend, you don't remember all the conversations you have. You do your best to remember all that you can recall.
Well, I appreciate that because, in the beginning of your testimony with the prosecuting attorney, you were very clear about all of these memories that you had about zombies, about dark and light.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a narrative. Move to strike. It's argumentative.
Sustained.
You were very clear on your testimony about zombies. You didn't have a memory loss about that, did you?
No,
You didn't have a memory loss about dark and light, right?
no.
You didn't have a memory loss about how often you saw Chad, right?
Sometimes I remember seeing him. It wasn't a memorable weekend to remember when he came in and out all the time.
But you were very clear about all of the things that Lori Vallow told you at the bequest of Chad. You were real clear about that, weren't you? No?
I said, yeah.
Okay. Judge, I don't know if you want to, I unfortunately have quite a ways to go now, and I apologize to the court, but I got a ways to go.
Oh, you don't need to apologize, Mr. Pryor. We'll take our time to get through this witness, but we are towards the end of where we're going to get with the witness today. As I mentioned, the court's got another hearing to take up this afternoon. So if there's no objection from either side, I would like to recess for the day and resume tomorrow. State okay with that?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Yes, Judge.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you retire for the evening, go home, please follow the court's continuing instruction and admonishment to not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. And please don't do anything to research or look the case up so you can remain unbiased in the case and make your decision just based on the evidence you hear here at trial. If you happen to run across any media about this case, please try to avert your attention from that. And with that in mind, I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Please
All rise,
also
please.
avert your attention from Chad's giant head. You will fall down if you look at his head and try to walk out the courtroom.
Make sure you don't get knocked over by his huge cranium.
Dude, do not get caught in the gravitational pull of Chad's head.
A glancing blow with that thing will knock you out for days.
Watch out for meteors that are traveling around Chad's head. Do not get caught in the crossfire. Folks, if you missed it, we potentially have a hearing coming up here in 15 minutes or at 5:30. So I guess we're just going to see if they keep the feed up.
Yeah.
See if they're going to.
I'm curious to see what it's all about. Yeah, I think prior.
Yes, thank you.
We'll
We'll be in recess until this next hearing starts at 3:30. The witness can
Establish
step
that
down and I will
she has
just remind you,
convenient
Ms.
memory.
Gibb, also.
She remembers when she's testifying for the state, but she forgets everything when she's testifying. Like, I mean, that was the point he was trying to make.
Yeah.
It's an old
You're allowed to
lawyer
discuss your
trick.
testimony with others that have testified in the case.
Cover-ups.
Looks like they're keeping the feed up, folks. So we'll stay here for about 10 minutes and see what this mystery hearing is about. Yeah. So if you missed it, you came in late. There's like this hearing by someone who was not at all related to the case, and the judge set up for a hearing today at 5:30.
Yeah, we have no clue what it's about. Susan, I think I don't know if he's getting anywhere. I tend to think that he's making little points. I don't know if they're really making any headway with the jury at all. I mean, it's like I think death with 1,000 paper cuts can work for the state. I don't think it's very effective for the defense. Just kind of winning points. And I saw Allie was in the chat, and it's like at the end of the day, who gives a shit if he's catching her on little lies or, things that she can't remember for things that really don't matter all that much. As long as Melanie remembers the important stuff, that's what the jury's going to remember. So,
and don't forget, Bob, we already have, from our boots in the ground there, the jury is already off put by this man. And I got to tell you, he was making points, but he was also pissing me off. So that's a factor just to think about. The jury apparently is not impressed by him, but I mean, will that overtake the fact that he is making her? To me, I think he's doing a job showing that she's has some credibility issues, but I don't think it's enough to
no,
get
and look,
not guilty or anything like that. I mean,
no, and
there's so much other stuff.
There's tons more evidence coming in. Like this is like Melanie's really what I consider to be the first star witness. I mean, they're going to be putting a lot of stuff on, because it's basically Pryor's entire defense boils down to, okay, well, you've got Lori involved there. You've got Alex involved. Where's Chad? It's like, it's the where's Chad defense. And, when you look at the things like that kind of low key, cop car, him talking to his daughter thing is huge, because it really shows that he knows the jig is up, man. I mean, he's like unequivocal about it. He's telling his daughter, you're gonna have to pay the mortgage. I'm not getting out. This he knows. And how do you know something? Well, because you know that they're digging up the bodies of 2 kids from your property. That's how he knew at that point. So, it's like just Pryor's gonna do his job, y'all. Like that. This is what the guy's job is. Like it's literally his job. And again, we want a competent trial to take place because no one wants this thing to get booted and kicked back for a retrial. I mean, no one wants to do this again, do you? I know I don't.
No.
Definitely don't want to do this again. I know that the family members don't want to do this again. Like, just, he's got a job to do. And, if you go in there and shit the bed as a defense attorney, they're looking at it on appeal. The only thing they look at appeal is the record, and the record is the transcripts. So if Pryor sat there like an idiot and never objected during the state, during their direct examinations, and goes up there and just lays eggs on cross-examination, doesn't do anything, they're going to be like, all right, well, this guy was ineffective. Like this guy just like, you don't want that. You really want the thing to be tried properly, have them test the evidence. And ultimately, we just have to hope. And I'm very, very secure in the fact the jury's going to come back with the right verdict on this one. So plus it makes for much more interesting trial watching. Like this would suck if he was just up there asked like 3 questions and like he's done. Like you want to see the antagonistic. That's why we watch trials. I love cross-examination. Direct examinations are boring as shit. Like for both sides, it's boring. You love cross-examinations because that's where you get the battles, so I love cross-examinations, and I love when both sides do them. Like it's just, that's where you can really tell who somebody is if they're a skilled litigator, like if you can cross-examine, because anybody can direct exam. That's like you're just asking questions, open-ended questions, and allowing the witness to give narrative answers. When you're trying to, like, remember in cross-examination, and I was talking about this yesterday, when he's saying okay or right or correct at the end, we're taught that you are like a cross-examination, you are controlling the examination. You are trying to limit their answers to yes or no. You do not want to leave leeway. And this goes for the state or the defense, both sides. Like your job on cross is to absolutely control that witness so that they're not given leeway to just start yapping, So that's why he'll always be like, yes, or right, or correct, or right. I mean, like he always ends his questions with that because it's leaving it to where it's basically a yes or no answer. Sometimes he'll give her a little leeway, but if you'll notice, a vast majority of the answers are yes and no, and that's the way it's supposed to be on cross. But I get that he bugs people. Like, I mean, I get it, but it's like I think I'm probably tone deaf to it just because I'm a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like it's impossible for me to watch something like through the eyes of a layperson who is just like, oh my God, like this guy, what a jagoff. It's like for me, I'm like, it sounds like every lawyer I ever see on cross-examination. It's like, it's not supposed to be tea time. It's not two people enjoying a nice tea with one another. Cross
I get that, but I feel
very
like
antagonistic. It's sometimes you got to get like, sometimes it's snippy, man.
I get that, but I get the sense just from like I feel like just as if I was like out and like talking to Pryor at a bar, like he would be a like I just wouldn't like I just
Yeah, for
his
sure.
you know what I mean? Like because there are attorneys. I mean, the first attorney I had on was Christine Long. Like she was defense attorneys, and she had a battle with this woman who was like a total pain in the ass. But I think Charlotte put it in the chat before, like she did a great job. I thought that James Crumbley's attorney.
See, but we were all rooting for Zach in
That's
that
true.
case.
Well, I wasn't
Like
rooting
you gotta like that's
I
what
wasn't
I'm
rooting for
saying.
James Crumbley, and I liked his attorney.
I mean, I don't know if you liked her as much as you respected her for doing like
I thought she did a good job.
I thought she was great too. Like I like both of them, just but again, like I'm judging less on personality. Like I think that people that don't practice law like really factor in personality a lot more, which I probably undervalue because like again, like you guys are the juries.
Right.
So if you guys are all like, this guy's a fucking jerk off, and I'm like oblivious to it, like I trust your judgment on that more than I do mine, just because, like I said, I probably am tone deaf to it just because I've done it so many times. I've seen so many lawyers doing it. It's like, it's par for the course, whereas like you guys are seeing it, and like that's what matters ultimately is what the jury thinks. You know what I'm saying? Like that, those people like that, when our friend of the show was like, he's making points, but the jury fucking hates him, like that kind of balances out, like not in the favor of his client, because ultimately they're going to be like, I cannot stand this guy's voice. I cannot hear this guy ask one more question or I'm going to claw my eyes out of my skull. You don't want that as a jury, but like the one thing I know, this guy cannot change his personality.
No,
He could try to change his tone a little bit, but he's going to be John Pryor through and through. It's like, that's why, the best practitioners are likable. I mean, you try to be likable, even if you have a cross-examination where, going in that you're going to have to go hard at the witness, in order to try to get them to move up of a position or a statement that they've made in the past. Because like we always know what the warts are, what our problems are going to be with a witness going into that cross-examination. We've read the police reports, or we've listened to the interviews. We know the statements that are like crushing our case, and those are the things that we need to try to like rehabilitate any way we can. So it's like, and it goes the same for the state. If they've got witnesses that are not helpful for them, they know going in on cross, they know what they have to address. So it's really like a chess match. But there's like, I mean, lawyers that really want to like, in cross-examination is an art. It's like not everyone can do it. I've seen just horrible cross examinations where they're not controlling the witness. Like even we got the right result in Murdoch, but I thought that Creighton's cross examination of him was brutal, just because he was allowing that pinhead to just yammer on for like hours. I'd never seen and I'm like, well, maybe Creighton's move here is to just let this guy talk and bury himself with his own bullshit. You know what I mean? Like with Murdoch, I could see that as being an approach where you typically want to control the witness, really kind of like keep their
Right.
answers confined to yes or no. He wants this guy just to keep yapping and just blabbing because he knows he has a huge big mouth. He knows that he loves to hear himself talk, and he knows that eventually he's going to trip himself up. So that very well could. Like when I saw Creighton at CrimeCon, I was going to corner him. And I was going to say, hey, man, I wanted to ask you about your cross of Murdoch, because lawyers will nerd out on that shit. He'd be like, because I would have said, what was your approach going in? Were you going to just give him the rope, and let him just keep pulling until he hung himself? So yeah, it's, I love this stuff, but I'm a law nerd. So,
Did he just fly out of there after his gig? After his
no,
music gig?
he was super hanging out, dude.
Oh,
Like
nice.
he was in the bar every night. I definitely had some nice chats with him. Yeah, the whole everybody at CrimeCon, like when the day is over, because CrimeCon is basically you have the full day where you have podcast row where all the podcasters are sitting out there at their tables. You go up and shoot the shit, get merch, collect all your stickers and all your giveaways. And which, by the way, make sure you have your war chest of goodies for the table at both. You got to have your stickers, all your little goodies. And you're not going you just, you're going stickers and buttons and small things for the giveaways. You're not giving away t-shirts and shit, dude. So don't be going crazy.
No, I'm not. Trust me.
But yeah, like during the day at CrimeCon, you've got your day, and then there's always speakers. They have multiple rooms going. You got to kind of pick and choose. You're like, ooh, this one's talking about this case, or this one's talking about this case. And then it usually shuts down around 5 or 6 o'clock. And then everybody goes and eats dinner. And then typically the bars get filled in and it gets packed. And, all the people that are attendees are milling about, and all the people that are there presenting, or, it's a really, really fun time. It's really, and everybody's kind of true crime dorks. You know what I mean? So we're all there for the same reason. So we've all got this thing in common, and it just makes for a really fun weekend typically.
Yeah, guys, the hearing the court's still up. We're just waiting for them to turn the cameras back on. So they're going to be showing this hearing, it looks like.
Yeah, they're 2 minutes late, Jay. I don't know if I approve of this.
I never approve of it. I'm very early to everything.
Yes, you are a very timely man.
I'm a very timely, annoyingly timely.
He's a very timely man. I said wood into your mother. Oh, sorry. Trying to see what's up in the Twitterverse. I wanted to talk we touched on it a little bit. So this, what are you thinking about this alibi thing with the Koberger thing? Have you seen this motion at all?
No, I just saw people saying that he said he was stargazing. That's all I've.
It's a little more detailed than that. So he's claiming that they've got an expert who was ex-law enforcement, and that the guy's got a ton of experience. He typically does not testify on behalf of defense, but that this guy is claiming that his forensic evaluation of the phone establishes that Koberger was in this state park, miles and miles away from Moscow, Idaho, at the time that the murders took place. And
do we know if the state is saying the opposite, that his phone was at the crime scene?
Well, yeah. I mean,
because it wasn't.
They're saying that his phone was turned off. They're saying that it was either turned off or in airplane mode, that he wasn't pinging for a period of 2 hours, and that ultimately, what they're really relying on is they have this white vehicle that looks like his Elantra, like all around the property. They catch him like a bunch of different times circling around, doing the 3-point turn, and their theory is that that's him. I mean, you cannot see the driver from the video, but it certainly looks like his car. So it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting. What happens if Koberger was smart, what happens if he stuck his phone in somebody else's car and somebody else was driving around?
Well, that was honestly when you said that, what if he just fucking left his car and his phone in the park or wherever they're saying it is, and just because he knew they were going to check his phone, you know what I mean?
I mean, you'd have to be an idiot to think that they wouldn't check where your phone is. You know what I mean? So yeah,
just like Murdoch, he turned off his phone, and then
right, maybe that's exactly what he did. Maybe he dropped his phone off in the park, did the deed, and then went back and scooped his shit a couple hours. His phone was off for a couple hours, which to me would potentially that would be a plausible explanation. As Steve was saying, it's if the sheath with the DNA, and I don't want people to start saying it's touch DNA.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Oh,
we're back, folks. They're coming back. Just takes a second. Here we go. Let's see what this mystery motion is about. We're going to see some new guy that we don't even know who he is.
All right. Good afternoon. We're on the record
Here
on
we go.
case CR 22211623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell.
There he is.
Mr. Daybell is here present, represented by his attorney, Mr. Pryor. The state's here present, not currently seated at the prosecutor's table. Seated there is attorney Terry S. Ratliff.
There he is, folks.
Along with another attorney, Mr. Bartlett, who represents Mr. Ratliff.
What?
The court is taking up today an order to show cause hearing, and I'm going to briefly discuss the procedural history that brings us to this at this time.
Wow.
I'll note that this was a motion that was filed by Mr. Ratliff, who is a bar licensed attorney through the state of Idaho, and filed a pleading purporting to be the attorney for the defendant in this case. And the pleading was filed on March 29th at 11:42 p.m., so shortly before midnight on a Friday. And I do want to discuss briefly the timing of the filing. The court was conducting jury questionnaires and preparing for jury voir dire in this case, which of course is a capital murder case, an incredibly serious case where the court counsel has spent a tremendous amount of time preparing for and getting ready for trial where we are now. The court was not made aware of the filing because it was not entered in the case until Sunday morning on March 29th. That would have been on March 31st. That was Easter Sunday before we were going to start with our voir dire the following Monday. On Easter Sunday, my staff attorney, who had an opportunity finally to travel home and spend Easter with her family after a very long week, was interrupted out of her church services and contacted the court that we had an emergency happening in our case that was going. And the emergency was we had a motion to continue the trial. And I wasn't sure who was asking to have the trial continued, why the trial would be continued. But this created a tremendous amount of quick response required by the court, by staff, by clerks, by the prosecutors, by the defense, all occurring again on one of the few days we had a break as we were grinding through jury selection on Easter Sunday. The pleading the court received is entitled Motion to Intervene and to Continue the Trial in These Proceedings, filed by Mr. Ratliff on his official office pleading letterhead, signed by Mr. Ratliff as the attorney for the defendant, both on the signature line and on the caption. I'll note the pleading incorrectly spells the word motion.
Oh my God.
It incorrectly spells the word continue. It incorrectly spells the word proceedings.
Was
in
this
its
guy
caption.
shit-faced drafting up a motion?
And
On Easter Sunday.
when I
Sounds
reviewed
like it,
this,
dude.
I'm going to tell you, Mr. Ratliff,
Oh boy.
Wow.
I was angry then, and I think I'm angrier now about what you did. However,
Whoa.
in light of allowing you some due process,
Wow.
I looked through a correct way to handle this, and I considered Rule 11. I'll note you've retained an attorney, Mr. Bartlett, and I have reviewed a lengthy response brief along with declarations submitted on your behalf. And procedurally, where we are, first of all, the order to show cause for me is for you to explain, Mr. Ratliff,
what you
to
thought you were
personally
doing.
explain to me how
This is
your pleading complies with Rule 11 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. Typically, when someone shows up with an attorney,
Pause
their
it 1
attorney gets
second,
to
Jay.
argue for
I gotta
them.
tell Allie what's
However,
up.
I just
So Allie, real quick, we got this guy's an Idaho licensed attorney. The guy, you can barely see him. There's 2 lawyers sitting right there. So this Terry Ratliff guy, apparently on March 29th, which was Easter Sunday, prepares some bizarre motion saying that he is Chad Daybell's attorney. And we still don't know what the content of the motion itself is, but it's like, you know, the judge is like everyone was enjoying their Easter. And like, as soon as this thing, we got noticed that there was a filing that he was asking for a continuance and blah, 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 blah. You know, like everyone had put all the wheels in motion and people were like, what the hell is this? Who is this guy? You know, so it created a bunch of havoc when people are trying to enjoy their Easter Sunday. And, you know, and then, so the judge filed this against him. It's for a rule. And, you know, and he's noting, look at you misspelled motion. What else did he misspell, Jay? Like 2 other things, very
some other
simple
words. I forget what.
continuance, like 3 things. Like, it sounds like he's shit-faced, like filing some bizarre motion. So the judge has him here today to give him the opportunity. The judge wants to hear what the hell was going on in his mind when he thought it was a good idea to file this motion. So that's
So here we go. And Bob, you're welcome. I texted Allie just to make sure she was aware. Is that why Allie came on?
Yeah.
I texted her. I didn't want her to.
under certain circumstances, I don't know that the right to counsel attaches, and in particular, under a Rule 11 request, I don't believe it does. I'll note the Rule 11 is a rule of civil procedure, which typically would not apply in a criminal filing. However, there are rules under the criminal rules that states we do follow civil rules when there's no corresponding rule. And in particular, criminal rules 47 and 49 indicate that filings of motions in criminal cases are to be filed in the same way and manner, and using the word manner, in which pleadings have to be filed in civil cases. Rule 11 governs licensed attorneys and the representations they make. There's been some indication of your counsel that perhaps Rule 11 doesn't apply. I believe Rule 11 does apply. I don't believe lawyers can file whatever they want in a criminal case without being subject to the representations under Rule 11, where they certify certain things and making those filings as officers of the court. To argue otherwise would say any lawyer could file anything they want in a criminal case and not be subject to any kind of sanction under Rule 11. And I believe Rule 11 permits exactly that, for me to consider it. Rule 11 under Part C3 allows the court to conduct an inquiry on its own initiative. And the court has done this, not at the request of the parties, but at my own request, because I do have questions for Mr. Ratliff. And I'll note procedurally, while I appreciate the time and research Mr. Bartlett has put into the case, we don't have a party in this case appearing before me. Mr. Ratliff, you are not the defendant. You are not the state. You are not a prosecutor. You are not the defense attorney. You are an attorney with a license that filed something asking me to stop this trial when I don't think you had any legal standing to do that. And I'm going to give you personally an opportunity to make any explanation you want as to some of my questions.
Yes, babe.
I
he had
am not going to
nothing do
turn
with
this
the case.
into an adjunct litigation under the auspices of this capital murder case, because quite frankly, you don't represent the defendant here. You don't represent the state. You're not a party. And I'm not going to let this devolve into a whole separate procedural mess in this case and create a record of some side issue that has nothing to do with the charges the state is currently putting evidence on for. So now that I've had my say about how we got here and why we are here,
Ratliff is in the
Mr.
bottom
Ratliff,
screen.
I have questions for you under Rule 11. And if you'd like to answer those questions personally, I will ask you some questions. If you don't want to answer those questions under the advice of counsel, I'll understand that as well. And I don't know that I even need any input from the parties. So, Mr. Ratliff, are you going to answer the court's questions as it relates to Rule 11?
Hello? Hello? Talking to the mic, jackass. You serious?
What the fuck?
Hello.
What? How dare you, Siri?
Okay.
You gotta be fucking kidding me right
You
now.
gotta be kidding me. Judge, tell him to talk into the mic.
Otherwise, they can really listen to the process.
Oh my freaking god! All that build up and we can't fucking hear this.
Sarah, he's not there. Neither of them are talking into the mic.
I'm not in contempt. I'm not in contempt, Mr. Bartlett.
Oh. Judge, have a put on his mic. Come on, someone in the
my
courtroom.
God.
What the basis was, what he had shown. Was he showing cause that he ought to be allowed to do? Was he showing cause where it might be complied with Rule 11? Was he showing, we didn't know. We only learned, excuse me, Judge, late on the 16th that I was told where we got Rule 11.
Oh, was that inconvenient for you?
Whoa.
Was that, I'm asking you a direct question. Was that inconvenient for you?
Your Honor, it was only that I didn't have the.
All right, guys, here's the deal. I'm going to try to do the volume booster, but you realize if I do the volume booster, I can't like do it for him and not the judge. So just, I'm giving you the heads up. I'm going to try to see if I can jack up the volume. Just heads up, the judge is going to be louder too. Oh my God.
Was it super loud?
It's not right. Very sorry. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience of no trees.
Mr. Bartlett, hold on.
It's not going to help. I'm going to make that because that's going to blow out our fucking eardrum. Sorry, guys. I really tried to work there, but this is going to blow.
I indicated I wasn't going to have you argue this motion. I allowed you to start making it, and you are doing precisely that. I've thought this through. I'm in Rule 11 here. I'm in a rule that governs lawyers and their pleadings. When lawyers sign off on pleadings, lawyers are responsible for their pleadings. Lawyers, unless they're facing a sanction of jail under contempt, do not necessarily have the opportunity to have counsel represent them on a Rule 11. If you file a frivolous civil complaint and a judge says, I'm going to award fees because it was frivolous, you don't get to have another lawyer from another firm jump in between you and the judge and the complaint you filed, because you have the responsibility as a licensed attorney to put your name on pleadings and stand behind your signature under those rules, under Rule 11 and what you certify. And you answer those. In my opinion, and I'm the judge here, this is how you address Rule 11. So with all due respect, Mr. Bartlett, I appreciate you attempting to and wanting to represent your client. Again, you can do that. You've talked to him before. You can talk to him after. But the questions I have on Rule
Are for
11
you.
relate directly to a pleading that Mr. Ratliff filed as licensed attorney in this case. And I have a right to ask him about his pleading that he filed. And so if you want to take a moment to consult with him, you can do that. But I'm not going to have you argue the merits of this. That will be up to you or Mr. Ratliff.
Oh, fix the mics. Fix the
Ask
mics.
that I have an opportunity to speak with him. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, I'll take the time you need.
Thank
I
you,
don't want to
Court
spend
Officer.
much more time this
MVP.
afternoon. We're in the middle
A
of this
great
trial. We've
bailiff.
had evidence today. We're going to have evidence tomorrow. Make it quick and then let me know what your client wants to do.
Yes, Your Honor.
Holy shit!
This
I don't think I've
great.
ever seen a judge. I mean, it was like he pulled this guy in the principal's office. I mean, Bob, if you, that man is pissed.
Oh, dude, he's so pissed. And like he fake gave him the opportunity to let his lawyer speak, thinking that this guy would be like, no, I'll answer myself. And then when his lawyer, the Bartlett guy, started talking, the judge was like, all right, idiot. I was giving you the chance to like lie on your sword yourself, but now you're gonna hide behind your lawyer. I ain't letting it happen. I need to hear from you, Ratliff. He's got to be like, yeah, I drank like a half a bottle of bourbon and was completely shit-faced, Judge. Sorry, my fault.
He was like, were you inconvenienced? I double dare you. Tell me you were inconvenienced. He was
Yeah. Oh, dude, I love this. I love this. So he's like, this guy's in deep shit. Like the judge isn't going to throw him in. Like the disciplinary committee. He's. I wouldn't.
If he doesn't answer the question, he's going to get double disciplined.
Well, he could get disbarred. This is like a death penalty case. This isn't like
I know,
he
doesn't
wrote.
answer the question.
Do you know what he did?
Guaranteed
He
disbarment.
pretended like he was Chad Daybell's lawyer on the eve of Vordire starting. Sent a
Thank you.
motion,
Please be
filed a
seated.
motion
Here we
saying
go.
that he was seeking continuance for the case.
All right, Mr. Ratliff, I have some.
You know what the judge said? Hold on, real quick. He said this. Wait, I'm gonna just. He said,
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
What?
Some questions about your pleading. Are you willing to answer those?
Sure am.
oh boy.
All right. The pleading I'm looking at, it's not been entered in the case yet, and the pleading. Give me just a second.
Oh, Lord. I think he's not going to say he was drunk. He's going to say he was drunk.
The judge was like,
You saying you want a piece of
I
me?
predict his sanction is he's going to have to live
You did,
on
in
Chad's
fact,
head
file
for a
this
week.
electronically in CR. Well, that's wrong too, the case number, but this is case CR 22-21-16-23, the state of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. I'll note the case number is wrong as well. You got it, CR 12-21. The first part I want to know under Rule 11, which requires you to make representations to the court. You hold yourself out as, entitle yourself attorney for the defendant. Why do you say that?
Judge, as you know, this is a template form, and I simply forgot to take that off of there. That was a Scrivener's error on my behalf.
Okay, Scrivener's error.
Okay.
On the,
If you notice in the body of the motion, Judge, I say without permission of the defendant or his trial counsel.
all right, let's look at your signature on page 3. You signed Terry S. Ratliff of the firm, attorney for the defendant on page 3, don't you?
Again, because it was in my template.
All right, on page 2, again, a signature, Terry S. Ratliff of the firm, attorney for the defendant, correct?
I don't have a page 3, Judge. I just have a page 1 or 2.
I'll take your word for it.
The bottom of the certificate of service is one signature, another at the bottom of the contents of the pleading.
If it's there, Judge, it's there because it's a template form and I didn't strike it.
Okay, so 3 times you called yourself the attorney for the defendant. So who are you the attorney for?
Me.
So Terry S. Ratliff, attorney for Terry S. Ratliff in this case?
I should have signed citizen.
Citizen?
Yes.
Why are you referencing your bar number if you're just citizen?
Again, it's the form, Judge. It's a reference to the form. I'm not Mr. Daybell's attorney, never was.
You put this on a pleading. If you look at the top left, you've got your name, your Idaho State bar number, your Ratliff Law offices, and attorney for defendant. You're telling me you mistakenly just wanted to file something as a citizen and not as a lawyer?
I was looking for immediate relief because of the concerns I had about the case, Your Honor.
And why were you doing that on a Friday night at almost midnight? You've known about this case for a long time, according to your own content here, right?
That's correct.
So why are you doing it then?
Because I thought I needed to do something to slow it down.
Trial scheduled for how many years? And you wanted to slow it down the day before trial started?
I'd also gotten calls from Mr. Pryor, Judge, for help.
Oh.
That might be fine, but did he ever retain you on the case, or did you ever enter an appearance for the defendant?
I did not.
Interesting.
All right, and you do state in here you're filing this pleading without the permission of the defendant or his counsel, correct?
That's correct.
I can't turn this off.
You also state in here and call yourself an intervener. What basis do you have to intervene?
Based on my,
On the brief.
yeah, it's set out in our brief, Judge, as to the basis for why I wanted to intervene. In the motion, I quote you the relief I wanted. I give you the grounds on page 1 as to why I wanted that relief and why I thought it was necessary.
Okay, and you're going to intervene now not as Terry Ratliff lawyer, Terry Ratliff citizen at large?
I think it's semantics, Your Honor.
Oh boy, let me stop you there. It's absolutely not. A bar licensed attorney filing something with their bar number to the court is completely different than a citizen. That is not semantics. This is what brings you within the auspices of Rule 11.
I understand. I said perhaps I should have signed it as a citizen, but I didn't.
All right. In your intent to intervene, whether it's as a citizen or an attorney, let me read you a couple of case quotes. Quote, the Idaho rules of criminal procedure do not provide a process for intervention. The inability of non-parties to intervene in a criminal case recognizes that the considerations underlying intervention in civil cases are not applicable to criminal proceedings. That's People versus Ham, and that's State versus Johnson, 167 Idaho 454. And we've also got another Idaho case citing, quote, petitioners are correct that Idaho's rules of criminal procedure do not provide a specific mechanism for third parties to intervene in a criminal case. So again, I think there's settled case law that prohibits intervention in a criminal case. And I'd like to know what authority you have that says you have a right to intervene either as an attorney or a citizen in this case.
As outlined in our brief, Judge, sorry about that. As outlined in our brief, we have given the court several cases where the Idaho appellate courts have allowed people to intervene in cases in a criminal matter, even though they're not parties. That's my basis.
So you intervene, and then we've got two parties here. We've got the state, we've got Chad Daybell, and you're going to float around and be what if you intervene in this case? What are you going to be?
I'm not going to be floating around this case, Judge, because you haven't granted my motion.
Well, assuming you got to intervene, you assumed in your motion you did intervene because you called yourself the intervener once you got going in your motion. What were you going to be at that point?
I was hoping to have a hearing in front of you before the trial started.
Okay. And you said you were going to be the lawyer for the defendant or already were the lawyer for the defendant. Is that
not? I explained to you just a few minutes ago that that was a mistake.
Explain to me all of the misspellings and typographical errors in your late night filing.
I was nervous and it was late at night. I didn't take this lightly.
You didn't take it lightly, but you used the wrong form. You misrepresented if you were an attorney or a citizen, and you signed 3 times as attorney for defendant. And that's your explanation?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Ratliff, I find based on your responses, you have violated Idaho's Rule 11 under the Rules of Civil Procedure, which I find are incorporated through Idaho Criminal Rule 47 and 49. The court would note that in the rules under C1, it's mandatory. It says the court must impose an appropriate sanction on an attorney, law firm, or party that violated the rule. And similar to what would happen in a civil case with a frivolous type filing, which this was, this cost time, this cost effort, this cost real loss for the attorneys, for the court. I'm going to instruct counsel for both the state and the defense if they could itemize the time they have spent both in today's hearing, in preparing for the hearing, as well as in dealing with this pleading from the time it was filed on Friday night, the 29th, whatever time you've put into that. I'm going to direct Mr. Ratliff that you pay reasonable attorney fees incurred for the time Mr. Pryor spent at his typical hourly rate for the state's attorneys and whatever rate they are entitled to charge as public prosecutors. And the court will likewise itemize some billing time incurred in this. And the sanction the court's going to order is the payment of those attorney fees. The court will provide time for counsel to submit those. I'll review those for reasonableness before I make an order. And pursuant to the rule, which requires a written order under Rule C6 of Rule 11, the court will describe in that order the conduct and the basis for the sanction, and you're going to pay for those fees. Do you understand that, Mr. Ratliff?
That's fine, Judge.
Very well. That'll
Your Honor, if I may, I'm going to request findings of facts and conclusions of law. As this court is aware, we submitted briefing that addressed many of the issues you addressed to Mr. Ratliff in great detail, giving multiple basis for his right to intervene. The judge, you have not addressed those arguments, and so I'm going to ask for findings of fact, conclusions of law.
Poking the bear.
All right. Well, Mr. Bartliff, you can ask. I'm not inclined to do that because, again, I've got a lawyer in front of me that submitted a pleading, and the lawyer is responsible for the pleading. I'm not necessarily allowing any further input on behalf of counsel for the lawyer that filed the pleading. I don't think it's proper because I'm not imposing any kind of jail time or sanction similar to Rule 75 of the civil rules, which would implicate on a contempt proceeding the right to counsel. So I'm going to stand by my ruling that I made and ask the attorneys to submit those. That concludes the matter for this afternoon.
Judge, if I may.
You may,
Judge, I am
may not. I'm done. I'm done with this issue, and I'm done wasting time on this issue in the middle of a capital case. We're done. We're in recess, period.
Get out.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
Wow.
Get out of my courtroom, you son of a bitch. That was awesome.
This was going to be anything interesting.
Wow.
We knew it was coming. It was like this mystery motion with this dude who was an intervener, and like, well, we knew that. We didn't know what he filed. We knew that he was asking for a continuance, but like beyond like who he was.
It is a little unfair.
Concerned
that
citizen.
That lawyer go along with no.
Well, roasted.
Yeah, interesting. That was almost the best part of the whole day.
Remember when this was like a boring trial until we had Melanie Gibb, and then this?
Yeah.
I don't know if in the trials I've covered that I've seen a lawyer this pissed since I've been covering. Like he was so fucking mad.
Yeah. So like the bottom line is, it sounds like Ratliff was disturbed as a member of the bar with this case proceeding, and it probably had something to do with the fact that Chad had lost one of his other attorneys, and then on top of that, Pryor had filed his motion to withdraw, which Boyce denied, and was like, "You're trying this case, dude, whether you like it or not." And Ratliff must have thought that, you know, Chad Daybell wasn't getting due process under the law. And, you know, so he's like, well, what can I do? So he thought, and like intervening in a criminal case is not a thing. Like you see interveners, Jay, in civil cases all the time. But, you know, as far as criminal cases, like that's just not a thing. They claim that they found some case law in certain circumstances in which, you know, somebody can intervene in a criminal case. And then he obviously lays out some grounds as to why he believes the trial, in order for due process to be followed, that it needs to be continued. So, and the judge wasn't hearing any of that shit. Like, he was stuck on the fact that this guy was like representing that he was Chad's lawyer, and like he's an officer of the court. Like, I'm surprised nobody used that term because he is an officer of the court. All lawyers are officers of the court. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Jan, legal mama Jan told me to look this up. He was the 2023 James May Trial Lawyer of the Year. I mean, how embarrassing is that, Bob, for an attorney to get reamed out, on a live stream, and and essentially the judge was, without saying it, was like, "Were you drunk, dude?" Like,
yeah, he definitely thought he was drunk.
like, what are you saying? You're saying this at midnight?
Yeah, the midnight filing, you're misspelling the word motion, you're misspelling the word continuance, you're like 3 misspellings. He's like haphazardly just firing this thing off, without and when you file something electronically and it's a big deal, like this guy said, he knew it was like a big deal. Like, I didn't do this lightly, Your Honor. It was, midnight on Friday, and I'd worked very diligently. And, so it's like before you hit that send button, it's like it's a big deal, especially if you're put something out there that is going to be public record.
And to the judge's point, this was on the eve of jury selection in a capital murder trial that has been around for years. Like, why are you doing this at midnight? And this judge, and like all his court on Easter Sunday, is like, holy shit, we got this motion, and now he got to deal with it. He was so freaking mad.
Oh, he was pissed.
Oh,
He read it but when he read it, he would have seen it said, without the permission of the defendant and without the permission of the lawyer. So he really didn't have to. He could have just been like this motherfucker and just threw it, disregarded it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't like it though.
No, especially because
and
I
it's
think,
his courtroom.
Jay, what
so
both of you said is right, and I believe he was actually drunk. That's where he got.
I think he was hammered.
Yeah, and the judge knows damn well he was.
Fuck! I'm intervening. All right, this bullshit. Fucking writes up some shit, like throws some case law, calls his buddy Bartlett. Oh, they're finding some case law that says I can intervene. I'm throwing to fuck these guys. Shit like that. Boop, send, and then
well,
there you go.
Dude, when this guy gets home, there's gonna be a bunch of people in his house. So he's like, "Did you guys see that?" And they're like, "Sit down, buddy. We have this is an intervention. You're sending shit when you're drunk at midnight on the day before Easter, dude. Holy shit,
Man, that was great. That was so much fun. Thank God they fixed the mics.
Yeah,
that would have sucked to not been able to hear like the Mishigash. It's like that was good. All right. Well, that was a fun way to end the day.
Yeah. Well, but we're not done, Bob, because we're going to be back, folks, at 9 p.m. Eastern to give you the background on Karen Reed. I'm going to portal you there on mine. Like it,
Me too.
Please. And thank you, mods, for all you have done today. And for everyone who has been here today, everyone who's helping us set up this background stream for 9 p.m.
We love you guys. Thank you for hanging with us. And we know these are long days. So, and we see you. We see who's here all day with us. And like, we beyond appreciate you guys hanging with us. It's amazing. It makes us feel special and warm.
It does. It really does. And a reminder for folks who follow the Ailson case in about an hour, I'm going to be back on with Judy, AA Legal Focus. And it's the bump anniversary. So if you guys want to come over to Judy, she's awesome. And Katie Kool-Aid will be there too.
Yeah. And I'm going to go record a Garcia episode in the interim. So we're both.
Look at that. So you guys
still very much on duty, the two of us, man. So
hardest working dudes in showbiz. But we appreciate you guys being here for us. We really do. So thank you.
We really, really do. It's everything. Because without y'all, we just be two old guys talking about new and old cases.
Perfect. All right. You got your portal set up, Bob?
Wait, hold on. Give me 2 seconds.
On
Hold on. I'm glad you asked. I'm in the process. It'll only take a second here. Portaling, redirect. Boop. All right. We are good to go.
All right, guys. See you. If I don't see you in an hour, we'll see you at 9 o'clock in about 3 hours. Thanks
Take
so
care,
much,
y'all.